Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are viewing today's program in the world. We are coming to you live from New York City via Zoom for today's Digital Health Symposium, presented to you by the HITLAB events team. And today's symposium around digital waves and transforming the health ecosystem and the impact of digital technologies on the health industry is one that's going to be super packed these next 3 hours with a vast array of insights from a whole plethora of leading healthcare subject matter experts within the field. Each hour is going to be packed full of presentations, fireside chats, and some panel discussions around how the health ecosystem is being impacted by the different digital health technologies that are coming through the current industry. My name is Jerry Antimano. I am the Senior Manager for Community Development at HITLAB, standing in place of Stan Kichnowski, who is currently over on the other side of the world in India, teaching at the Institute of Information Technology in Delhi. So I will be your host for today. And today we are also graced by a book giveaway by Colette Edwards, one of the friends of HITLAB within the community, who is giving away her book today. Very, very ideal for the theme for today's topic, navigating your healthcare journey. I've yet to read it myself, but for a lucky couple of you today who are in attendance, we are going to be giving away this book with some of our trivia that the team has prepared for us. The first attendee with the correct answer in the chat box will win a copy of the book by Colette. So the question should be coming up here soon. What percentage of adults in the United States use telemedicine in 2021? Is A 42%, B 28%, C 37%? And the chat box is going crazy right now, and the answer is 37%. It looks like Mark Haddle, I think, was first in the chat. I may be wrong, but I think it was, yeah, it looks like it was Mark. Congratulations, Mark, one of our Breakthrough One community members. First right into the chat with 37%. You'll be getting a copy of that book. Please get in touch with the team, or the team will be in touch with you to receive your copy of Navigating Your Healthcare Journey by Colette Edwards. And it's my pleasure to welcome to the program, not for the first time, Laurent van Leberg, the digital health investor and founder of Ballas Invest, and also chair of the HITLAB Breakthrough Alliance Europe 2. And he'll be speaking with Dr. Sachin Shah, who is also not a stranger to the HITLAB Symposium events as well, who's the digital biomarker lead at GSK, both dialing in, I believe, from the other side of the Atlantic in Europe. So welcome to both of you. Thank you for coming on the program and spending some time with us. Laurent, I will hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Jerry. This is the European corner to start the meeting, so that's really nice of you to organize that. And Sachin, Dr. Shah, very nice actually to be spending the time here. I encourage everybody here connected from anywhere in the world. Please go to LinkedIn if you want to correspond with us, connect, or ask questions about these. And Sachin, maybe I'll get immediately into the topic for these 20 minutes. Very excited to talk about biomarkers. Start with a broad question. I mean, maybe you can share your perspective on what you think the role and impact of biomarkers will be on healthcare and how we manage it.
Yeah, no, thank you, Lauren, for the question. And just before I start, a pleasure to always come back to HITLAB, and it's always exciting and invigorating conversation. So looking forward to it. I think the role digital biomarkers or digital measurements play in healthcare system is multifaceted. Obviously, my career hat on, we focus on digital biomarkers augmenting the evidence value chain in the drug development during the clinical phase trials. And then with my clinician hat on, obviously, we see the role of digital biomarkers playing in that continuous healthcare monitoring versus the previous didactic snapshot kind of way HCPs would interact with patients. I think digital biomarkers play a massive role from not only just like improving every day-to-day care from both the patient side and the HCP. So from like a patient side, we can talk about increased visibility to your healthcare professional or your healthcare system by, you know, submitting passive data or active data continuously whilst you're at home living your everyday life, therefore reflecting your disease state better rather than a snapshot that we typically see from HCP interactions. But also from a HCP point of view, you kind of get a reduced workload. It may seem like a bit of a burden initially, but once healthcare professionals get more familiar with monitoring patients via digital biomarkers, whether they are continuous monitoring or individual monitoring, often HCPs do notice a reducing workload because you've shifted the paradigm from reactive care, i.e. patients present with a specific symptomology, which usually suggests that their disease has progressed, to you know, active monitoring or being proactive, where you're actually trying to prevent those patients from having that symptomology in the first place. And I think lastly, especially when it comes to what I do in my everyday today, we really see the value of digital measurements and digital biomarkers in introducing that objective data to previously subjective data collection. So if you have tools that are based on eCOAs, such as patient-reported outcomes, clinician-reported outcomes, etc., digital tools such as wearables can play a huge role in adding a degree of objectivity to that otherwise subjective data, which obviously introduces a whole host of bias for various reasons.
And Sachin, before we get into you know, some question, maybe specific examples, do you actually see an evolution or an acceleration of how we use biomarkers? Because in a way, some people could say, yeah, we heard about it for the last 10 years. Is this really new? And is this really driving transformation, accelerating?
I mean, a great question. And I think I was having this discussion literally yesterday with a couple of colleagues. I think remote patient monitoring is such a good example of something that I would say is not necessarily, the concept is not necessarily new. We've had telephone clinics for years now. You've had virtual clinics for years now where, you know, consultants and healthcare professionals interact with their patients via email and or letters. I think the digital component of remote patient monitoring, I think, has ramped up. And obviously we all know that COVID, you know, accelerated that process. But what I've been seeing when I'm talking to my more on-the-ground colleagues that still work on the front line of healthcare services is that in some degree or one way or another, that these remote patient monitoring solutions have been largely embedded into healthcare systems in some way or another. I think there are lots of therapy areas that use it more frequently than others. So dermatology is a really good example of where remote patient monitoring has just now become the norm. My wife is a general practitioner, and she often has a lot of remote patient monitoring tools at her disposal, especially when she's doing virtual consultations via telemedicine or telehealth systems. I think the more sexy digital measurements and digital biomarkers, such as ML algorithms that detect subtle changes in radiological images, or fancy wearable devices that maybe process specific types of data or a collection of specific types of data to, say, predict exacerbations of Parkinson's disease. I think that work is still ongoing, and I still think we need a lot more relatable evidence. And I say relatable, HCP still have a degree of skepticism around the accuracy of these tools. I think the evidence is getting there. I just attended the Digital Biomarker Conference in Basel, hosted by Roche. And the amount of evidence now, a few years ago, everyone was saying, oh, we're going to do this research. And now at these conferences, people are presenting their research on how these tools, the sexy digital biomarkers, are actually showing some positive results in sensitivity and specificity when compared to your established methods of monitoring those diseases. So I think the acceleration is there for, I would say, the less sexy ones, the more infrastructure-based improvement of healthcare delivery. I think for the sexy ones, I still think we're a bit further away from seeing them being embedded in everyday healthcare.
And building on that, I mean, I'm sure in your day-to-day life in a big pharma and then in the ecosystem, I mean, what would be the few innovation that you saw or use of biomarker that you say, well, this is really striking, and you'd like to share with everyone here?
Oh, great question. So what, you know what, I think one of the things I've been really impressed by is big pharma have focused on the less sexy stuff, which I find very appealing. I've worked in companies, or I've seen companies that disregard the norm for the sexy stuff and it just fails. But I've seen in more recent years a lot of pharma consortiums coming together to approach regulators to say, look, this is an issue. There is an unmet healthcare need here for patients. We have a simple digital health tool in the form of a digital measurement that could be used to combat these problems. So I think very recently, a consortium led by various pharma partners such as Pfizer, I think Pfizer, Novartis, GSK, Takeda, went to the EMA to discuss the role that a wearable that collects actigraphy data could play in the monitoring of nocturnal scratch episodes in any condition that scratching or pruritus is an issue. A very simple solution for a very big problem. You know, it's not unsurprising that people with an eczematous disease complain about scratching, yet we're still relying on patient-reported outcome measures to ascertain whether an intervention works or not, because obviously we can't stick them in a room for a year and watch them on a camera. So I think the way the consortiums or these pharma partners, and obviously working with the third-party wearables, working with academic bodies, coming together to approach regulatory bodies, I find that's the thing that I'm very excited by. So it's not really specific to a digital biomarker per se, but more around the process and strategy of how we are approaching people that make the decisions on whether these things could be implemented. I see that ramping up quite a lot in the last few years.
It's very interesting that you mention, in a way, the boring stuff or the less sexy stuff, because that's a theme that I keep hearing. Actually, don't just go with the sexy, because sometimes the boring or less visible creates a lot of volume, a lot of value, and that leads to actually my next question. I mean, do you see these taking scale? In the not just in the industry, but maybe in the patient usage and the usage for the patient in managing our health, and maybe connected to value-based healthcare, or maybe personalized decision on the go every day?
I think that is the golden question, right? I think every time you attend conferences, everyone's asking around, how do I get a return on investment, or how do I calculate a return on investment, and how do I talk about scalability, especially if you're talking cross geography. I think if you stick to one geography, so I think Lundbeck do it very well in Denmark, and they keep it within Denmark, and they have no plans to scale outside of Denmark, and it works really well. But that scalability question is large in part the most difficult problem to solve. And ultimately, I think the companies that are doing it really well are your consumer facing companies. So your Apples, your Googles, right? They have, millions of everyday people wearing healthcare. I wouldn't say they're necessarily medical grade, but these consumer grade wearables that monitor everyday aspects of health. That the literature has a plethora of evidence that suggests that just monitoring your heart rate, your respiratory rate, your step count, blah, 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 all these simple tools can actually correlate to your everyday state of health and predict your disease severity. So, for example, metabolic syndrome, I know we don't really use that term anymore, but obviously the notion that, if you just keep healthy every day, eat well, drink well, sleep well, etc., you're going to live longer, evade common diseases like heart disease, diabetes, reduce your risk of cancers, etc. Actually, a lot of that is just monitored with your smartphone, with your wearable. And I think what we're seeing now is patients are more upskilled in inferring this data, what it means when they get a notification that, oh, your heart rate's been a bit higher the last few days. Have you tried exercising? Stuff like that. I think a lot more everyday people now are a bit more, oh, actually, yeah, I haven't stood up today. I've been at my desk for 6 hours. I better stand up. So I think we're actually seeing a shift more from the consumer side that now pushes it into the traditional healthcare system delivery models. So healthcare providers haven't got a choice but to start acknowledging this type of new data streams, this novel information set, and embedding it into how they deliver healthcare.
And the question it leads to is, obviously, with all these biomarkers, sensors, and you're showing your watch and phone and so on, do you think we have enough, let's say, ethical framework to protect this data and make sure it's used for the patient and not on the patient or beside the patient?
I guess the ultimate answer is, I think we can always strive to do better when it comes to communicating the data privacy and data security risks when obtaining this data. Back to the consumer grade healthcare argument, no one reads the terms and conditions. We all scroll to the bottom. We all tick accept, right? We're busy people. Everyone has 100,000 things to do, 100 other things to worry about. My data is not important. I don't care. Tick the box. I think it's the responsibility of the people collecting the data to make sure that those essentially e-consents are a lot more streamlined and the key information is there for people to understand. Obviously, the introduction of GDPR, which is now old news, has really transformed how we do that. You can't go on a website now without agreeing to cookies necessary or marketing based. I think we're moving there, but I think everybody needs to take a bit of responsibility when it comes to data security, but ultimately the onus should be on the companies that are collecting that data. So that can be the Apples, that can be the GSKs. I mean, we do it really well for clinical trial data, right? Clinical trial data is ironclad in the way we obtain like traditional human tissue samples, et cetera, et cetera. I don't understand, or I guess the question is, why is that not being translated into digital data? But that seems to be a more pan-industry issue, I guess, like in fintech, in legal tech, in all those other, all of the tech industries that are booming right now. They all, come across the same issues around instilling confidence in the consumer around, data security and privacy.
Yeah, I'll lead not necessarily the last question. I'm just watching the time, but I think for the people here on the line, and then for yourself, I mean, if you have a couple of minutes, what would be your, I wouldn't say dream, but maybe the thing you would love to achieve and do on new biomarkers or so on, maybe for the next few years, and maybe advice you would give to the ones listening.
So my dream and what I'm actively working towards is to get a digital endpoint approved by a regulatory body for the intervention, for the assessment of an intervention for any disease area. That would be the dream. I think we've had a couple of examples in the media recently, some positive, some negative. And I just think this is the barrier to mass adoption of digital biomarker or digital measurements in the clinical trial for drug development. I think if we can get one solid win under our belt, I say we as a pharma consortium under our belt, I think that will just start snowballing the effects. I think the advice I always give to people is pharma always tend to approach partnerships as a didactic interrelationship. I need a service, go provide the service, don't give any support, and then the service is provided and pharma are upset, relationships break down. I think the only way we'll see progression in this space, and that's just not even just digital biomarkers, in the DHT space globally, is by realizing that this is a partnership model. It takes a village to raise a baby type idea, right? The people that are experts in healthcare delivery need to work, use their expertise and leverage the people that are experts in tech, need to use the leverage of payers and providers, need to leverage the pharma, need to leverage the academics, and all come together to really understand, right, how do we transform healthcare, using this combined collective of intelligence to embed and implement digital health tools into everyday healthcare, from you being at home monitoring your own activity, step count, whatever, to your primary care physician keeping an eye on your healthcare as a whole, feeding into your secondary care if you have any diseases or comorbidities, tertiary care if unfortunately you need to get to that level of care, with an overarching access to data from academic bodies that could now use that data to conduct research that could better improve the quality of care, because we're getting better patient understanding, better disease state understanding, the natural history of disease progression, and then using that data to fuel drug discovery and innovation, both from traditional pharma innovation to tech innovation, because that data is now it was ethically sourced, curated and collected appropriately, and therefore usable for all these different health streams.
Look, maybe I'll take one question. What do we have? Maybe we have just a quick 30 seconds, and please send the question to Sachin or myself. I don't think we have time to answer all of them, but somebody was asking, do you see very good partners that you are working with that do what you explained very well? And maybe you can mention a few that people could contact or refer to.
Yeah, I think I have worked in both the large organizations and startups. The success stories always come from being able to identify the third parties that aren't, so the startups or the small organizations that aren't arrogant, and also finding the people within the large organizations that aren't arrogant, that want to work together. I think there are loads of companies out there that have shown really good ways of working with large organizations and small organizations. Just from my experience, even big ones. So I think Actigraph have got really good relationships with various large pharma organizations, and they also are happy to work with smaller companies that may have offerings that they can't provide. So they've really embedded that sort of partnership model. I think there's companies like Empatica and Connexa and VivaSense, all these companies that kind of have a device or a wearable or an SAMD, but also provide you that kind of platform plug and play model in addition to whatever their core offering is. So that's a couple of examples that I have.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sachin. It was a very interesting discussion, and I can see some questions on the chat. So again, please reach out to any of us or Sachin to follow up discussion, and then I pass back the word to you, Jerry.
No, thanks so much, Laurent. Thank you, Sachin. Phenomenal opening to today's Digital Health Symposium. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time as always. And as Laurent just mentioned, there's definitely a lot of activity in the chat. Please do feel free to reach out to Laurent and Sachin if they didn't answer your questions. I saw some come through in the Q&A as well. And we do also welcome everyone to introduce themselves in the chat with their LinkedIn's or their website links, as we do want to remain an open community when it comes to fostering some of the networking within the HITLAB ecosystem as well. But Laurent, Sachin, thanks so much for coming on the program, and we look forward to having you back on again. So with that, I want to just quickly move over from Laurent presenting, or Laurent moderating that discussion with Sachin, being the chair for the Breakthrough Alliance Europe, to actually announcing that we are going to be opening the applications for our second Breakthrough Alliance challenge for 2024. We had a hugely successful challenge that we just finished off in May of 2024 during the New York City Health Innovation Week. So we are inviting everybody to apply again, as the applications will be opening up tomorrow. The portal should be open from around 9 a.m., I believe, tomorrow morning. So do make sure, if you do have a digital health solution or a healthcare innovation that you would like to pitch, please do apply. The application shouldn't take more than 10 minutes. And this year we are being sponsored by Mercury Finance, as well as, of course, the members of the Breakthrough Alliance boards, the Merck Global Health Innovation Fund, and of course Ballast Invest as well. So do keep checking the HITLAB website, as the applications will be opening tomorrow, with some wonderful prizes for our first, second, and third place winners in terms of acceleration and development and help with adoption within the ecosystem from both HITLAB and the Breakthrough Alliance. And speaking of founders, I'm going to be passing it over to Ilya Popov, founder and CEO of Combat Mobility, a really outstanding startup that I know HITLAB has been working with very recently, and he's going to give us a presentation on what Combat Mobility is currently doing and give us some updates as to how they are doing. Ilya, are you there?
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to share my innovation with you and with your audience. Let me present my screen and go ahead with the presentation. I am the CEO and founder of Combat Mobility. In Combat Mobility, we have developed a method to identify the optimal interfragmentary movement and securing internal fixation safety, in addition to biofeedback device for patient weight-bearing compliance after lower limb fractures. When I sold my previous startup and become a fighter, I've got injured, spent 6 months in rehabilitation, and came up with a new medical device solution. And then I found unmet need and market opportunity. Weight-bearing protocols are not data-driven, so there is no consensus among surgeons. This graph shows the results of the 111 surgeons surveyed, and as you can see, for the same tibial patellar fracture, some surgeons allow patients to start weight-bearing immediately, while others prescribe non-weight-bearing for 12 weeks. And there are another partial weight-bearing prescriptions, when doctors ask patients to put 25% or 50% of their body weight, and patient had no idea how to follow this prescription. Well, I thought how it can result if patient don't load their legs correctly. And I was surprised to learn that in 6% of fractures, of lower limb fractures, the internal fixation fails. In 8%, the bone doesn't heal. And more than a third of patients suffer pain for more than 3 months after surgery. And those problems are 15 billion loss for insurance companies every year. And there are more than 5 million cases in the US where the weight-bearing protocols are required. So why there is still no solution on the market? Well, because competitions are weight sensors embedded to insoles and sandals. They are not reusable and very expensive to produce. And now, using a CT scan, we provide biomechanical analysis to determine the optimal load that will lead to faster bone callus formation and securing internal fixation safety. And with our FDA-cleared smart crutch tips and new treatment protocols, patients can start loading their legs earlier without the risk of damaging implants, expedite their recovery, and significantly reduce complications. Here are some scientific evidence. A recent study on rats proved that individual mechanical loading increases bone formation during the remodeling phase of bone healing. And it was a huge improvement, especially in the defect and cortical fragment periphery, where the callus volume was 111 and 130% more. Another study on tibial fracture shows that if a patient doesn't follow weight-bearing prescription, more elements fell outside the healing window, which slows down the healing process. And the next study has been done with 64 patients and shows much better bone mineralization when the micro movement in a fracture zone was in the range between 0.5 to 1 millimeter, compared to the range of 2 millimeters. And the mineralization time and the median time for the full weight bearing was 5 weeks faster. Now let's talk about the business. We are going to rent our devices for $500 per patient rehabilitation and sell it for $3,000 to providers, with the manufacturing cost of just $300. We have established our own manufacturing and developed 400 devices. It is FDA cleared and registered with CMS. FCC, HIPAA, and quality management have been successfully implemented. Also, we have 3 issued and 1 pending patent. Our first publication proved that Smart Crutch Tips is a valid tool for clinical use. Our satisfaction trial shows that it's so easy to use that on average it takes 6 minutes to train a patient on how to follow the weight-bearing protocol. A clinical trial with 50 patients at NYU Langone Health showed more than 50% higher compliance to weight-bearing protocols with our device. And currently we are discussing with level 1 trauma hospitals regarding their final study that will prove the significant savings for payers and the difference in patients' outcomes. We helped more than 250 patients so far to quit crutches faster and without complications, and our patients are really happy with us. Experience of our team covers the entire spectrum of functions related to software, hardware, and medical device business, and that's why our mentors from top-level hospitals are confident in our success. We have almost closed our seed round, and with this funding, we will be able to finish the research, obtain device use reimbursement, and commercialize our product with NYU Langone Health, Kaiser Permanente, HSS, and other hospitals. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your time. And if you'd like to join this growing business opportunity, please contact me via LinkedIn or by the QR code on the screen.
Real pleasure to have you back on the program again. Virtual round of applause for what Ilya is currently doing, and we would definitely want to be supporting founders like yourself, Ilya, who are really identifying a lot of these gaps within the unmet needs in the industry right now. And of course, we put Ilya's details and his LinkedIn in the chat as well. So please do connect with him if you are either an investor or just interested in what Ilya is doing. I'm sure he'll be happy to chat with you after the program. But Ilya, thank you so much for coming on the program. We really appreciate you coming back on and presenting the amazing updates around combat mobility.
Thank you, Jerry. Have a great day, and was a pleasure to meet you again. Bye.
You too. Thanks so much. Okay, all right, we'll move swiftly on. I just want to remind everybody also that these recordings are going to be on our YouTube channel. So do go onto YouTube and type in HITLAB in the search bar and subscribe to the channel so you keep updated for when we do post these recordings that we'll have on for today, in case you do miss it due to any internet interference or have other commitments during any of the panels or discussions that you may want to tune into today. Ilya will be at the Innovators Summit, actually, at the Microsoft Tech Center in December. It's going to be, I think, our 10th or 11th Innovators Summit that HITLAB is running. Historically, it has been at Columbia, but this year it is going to be at the Microsoft Tech Center, where we held the New York City Health Innovation Week. So do go to the HITLAB website, hitlab.org/summit, I believe. I think the link is going to be put into the chat. And do check out the wonderful array of speakers that we have lined up and the different options for attending as well. So we're going to move on now. I've got the pleasure of welcoming on to the program Vic Tandon, who has been a part of the HITLAB community for a while as well, from Blue Shield, California. And he's going to be talking to us about navigating the digital frontier and transforming healthcare with digital health solutions. And I've got the honor of being able to moderate this session. Vic, are you there?
Good morning.
Good morning to you, Vic. Thanks so much for coming on the program, and we know how busy you are, and we really appreciate you being able to share your insights with the audience today. But those in the crowd that aren't that familiar with who you are, if you could give us a quick introduction of who you are and what you do.
Sure. Pleasure to be back joining the HITLAB community and the latest digital virtual symposium here. So thanks for the opportunity, Jerry. My name is Vic Tandon. I am Director for Health Innovation Product Strategy. So I lead a function within a small cross-functional team called Health Innovation Technology at Blue Shield of California. Our team is focused on really understanding opportunities for the application of emerging technology for us as a not-for-profit health plan. For those who are not aware, Blue Shield of California is a not-for-profit member of the National Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. We operate almost exclusively in the state of California, cover almost 4.9 million members in California and nationally. So excited to be here and excited to talk a little bit more about the opportunities of technology in healthcare today.
No, absolutely. And let's dive right into it. But being in the position you are and with your work at Blue Shield in California, we'd love to hear about some of the emerging trends in digital health technologies that you yourself believe are going to have a significant impact on the health industry in, say, the next 5 years to a decade or so.
Yeah, so it's those who try to prognosticate on the emergence of technologies and their application, particularly timing, are almost always wrong. So I'll preface what I have to say with that statement. So from my personal point of view, I see kind of technologies that's going to have impact kind of spanning from mundane to fantastic. So in kind of the near term, the more mundane technologies, if you can call it that, are those focused around the exchange of clinical and administrative information, mostly enabled through FHIR-based interoperability protocols and standards. And then kind of the use of those technologies enables a lot of will enable, in my opinion, a lot of transformation in terms of both care delivery and kind of administrative and operational processes between providers, members, and health plans. Looking a little bit, further term from interoperability is, in my opinion, artificial intelligence. Not necessarily the super sexy large language models, but more kind of classical machine learning techniques. I think the emergence of large language models and generative AI is actually having an interesting effect of kickstarting more interest in some of the classical techniques around machine learning and applying them to things like risk prediction, stratification, and the like. Fraud, waste, abuse detection, among a few use cases. And then longer term, kind of between that 7 to 10 year mark, in my opinion, are the application of large language models and generative artificial intelligence to do things like helping providers scribe ambiently the clinical interactions that they're having with their patients, to driving really tremendous amounts of hyper personalization, whether it's in truly personalized benefit design, as an example, or more kind of proactive and preventative interventions enabled through things like digital twin. And I'll couch my kind of long-term, 7 to 10 year statement with a recognition that a number of U.S. health plans, particularly those that are publicly traded, Cigna, United Health Group, Anthem, and a number of recent earnings calls have started to talk about the transformative power of generative artificial intelligence for their businesses. But for me personally, I take those statements with a grain of salt, just kind of recognizing the tremendous amounts of uncertainty and complexity with actually applying the technology beyond some basic kind of co-pilot like functions that folks are starting to see embedded in enterprise applications like Microsoft Office and Google.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in sort of the broader context of healthcare transformation, and again, another sort of looking ahead sort of question for you, Vic, in terms of sort of the future direction of digital health solutions, what sort of opportunities and challenges do you see that lie ahead right now?
Yeah, so I think context is really important. So the business imperative for really innovation across the healthcare ecosystem and the introduction of digital health technologies is rapidly transforming. And the way I say, there's two really factors that are converging in the environment. One is the continued rise and, in fact, acceleration in the cost of healthcare. So I was just reading, I think a few days ago, PwC released their projection for healthcare cost increases into 2025, and it's 8%. So we're talking something like 3 times the rate of annual inflation for other kind of consumer goods and services. And that's kind of coupled with, I think, seeing, particularly here in the United States, increasing intervention by legislators and regulators on the healthcare ecosystem. So it's been a bit of a long arc over the past 2 decades, going back to high tech and ARA to more recently some of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services announcements around regulating prior authorization. And it's the confluence of these two factors, so rapidly rising costs of healthcare and a desire amongst regulators and legislators to more actively intervene in the healthcare market, that are creating both opportunities and challenges, I think, for both incumbents in healthcare enterprises as well as upstarts. So from an opportunity side, particularly for those who are developing digital health solutions, being able to anchor on your solution to driving value in those two dimensions, right? Helping incumbent plans navigate existing kind of regulatory and legislative landscape and kind of what is being required or asked of them, or having meaningful, demonstrable impact on cost of healthcare, I think present tremendous opportunity, right? From a business model standpoint, from a positioning standpoint, product market fit standpoint. The flip side of that, right, from a challenge standpoint, is is really on kind of proving, delivering value. And I think that has been, a challenge for quite a while in the digital health space. And, many may have read or seen kind of the Peterson Health Tech Institute findings on digital diabetes management solutions that, pretty much, shut down the value of a number of those market solutions. So there's both promise and peril as kind of regulators and legislators kind of drive incumbents to take more proactive action on healthcare costs. But with that, market imperative, it makes it really, really challenging and important for emerging solutions to be able to provide demonstrable value to the customers that they're selling to.
No, I think some sobering points you definitely bring across, Vic. And just before we wrap up, I think it would be remiss of me if I wasn't to ask you, being with you having the experience that you have from a strategic standpoint, how important, and you mentioned this earlier around sort of the regulatory pieces that you were talking about, how important is it in terms of collaboration between sort of the tech providers, the healthcare organizations, and the regulatory bodies, and the importance of that collaboration in ensuring successful integration of digital health solutions right now?
In a word, that collaboration is critical. And so, as I said, my perspective is that legislative bodies, regulatory bodies are going to, in particular, are going to continue to play a large outsized roles in influencing the kind of business context and strategic imperatives of incumbent organizations, whether they are in the healthcare delivery or financing side of the realm. And just recognizing, right, that healthcare is a complex system of systems, really. So kind of solutions in any one domain, whether it's the healthcare space, the provider space, or consumer space, will often have impact on other stakeholders. And it's just important to recognize, the second, third, fourth order effects of a particular intervention. And with that kind of complexity comes an imperative, really, to work closely together across the healthcare ecosystem in ensuring, right, that the highest quality, lowest cost, most accessible, interventions and healthcare opportunities are available to the patients that we're all serving.
Really wonderful insights there, Vic. And I'd like to thank you so much for taking some time to spend with us and share those insights around, the importance of collaboration and your viewpoints and insights as to sort of what's going to lie ahead for transformation in healthcare with digital health solutions as well. And coming on, of course, on the early side, on the West Coast as well, I really, really appreciate it. Want to definitely have you back on the program again, Vic, but thanks so much for coming on, and wish you a good rest of the day.
Thanks so much, Jerry. Pleasure to be here, and hope a good time.
Cheers, Vic. Thanks so much.
Bye.
I saw a couple of questions come through in the chat. If Vic didn't answer some of those points that you may have raised, please do connect with him on LinkedIn. His details are in the chat, I believe. So do feel free to connect with him, as well as some of the other speakers that have been on so far on the program as well. And just to let everybody know, when you are putting your LinkedIns in the chat, please make sure you are sending it to everybody, not just the hosts and panelists. Otherwise, not everyone is going to get it. Just before we move on to our next speaker, I do want to remind everybody that our Women's Health Tech Challenge is live. The applications are open, so please do apply if you are a founder, not necessarily just a female founder, but that certainly does help. That is addressing a current unmet needs of women's health right now via technology and health innovation. It is free to apply to and free to participate in if you are selected as a finalist. And the pitch day is going to be taking place at the beginning of October, with the applications closing at the beginning of September. So do apply now. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself and Stan. And on the topic of founders, we're going to move on to our next speaker here, who I have the pleasure again of of moderating our session together. Purva Zawar from Beyond Rehab, and also an assistant clinical professor with our friends over at UCSF. Purva, are you there?
Hi.
Hello, thanks for coming on the program, and we really appreciate your time. We know how busy you are, especially with Beyond Rehab and being with UCSF as well. For those in the audience that aren't familiar with who you are, please give us a quick 30-second introduction as to who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thank you for having me here. I'm Apurva. I'm a neuroclinician and founder of Beyond Rehab. Beyond Rehab is a virtual care delivery platform mainly for helping individuals newly diagnosed with Parkinson's, dystonia, and other movement disorder conditions, helping them better manage their care and improve their function and quality of life. And I'm happy to hear and talk about the digital waves in Parkinson's today. No,
wonderful. Let's definitely just jump right into it. We'd definitely love to hear from you, especially around the Parkinson's piece, in terms of how can virtual, especially Parkinson's care programs, bridge that gap between the discontinuous care models that we may see, and also integrate daily physical and also cognitive training to combat disease progression and also improve function.
Sure. So Parkinson's is a chronic progressive neurodegenerative condition. It presents with wide range of symptoms, including motor symptoms like changes in gait, slowness, tremor, along with non-motor changes like pain, sleep changes, mood changes. So it affects individual as a whole, and it's fastest growing condition. So it's really important to find ways on how can we deliver integrative and personalized care to the individual, since it's very variable and very different from person to person. So with the virtual care delivery, it makes it unique because there is a way we can help individual incorporate healthy behaviors through reminders, through regular tips and tricks sharing to help them better manage their conditions, promote healthy behavior. Along with that, also helping them take active role in their care delivery by helping them understand the condition, helping them acquire the skills needed to better manage their condition, and also effectively track their presentation through passive tracking, through self-tracking, and communicate with their providers. So having that system helps them use the data, use the skill sets to actively take role and actively participate in their care management, versus like just being involved more passively, or more where they are just being involved in seeing the doctors once or twice a year and just following through that. So we really want to leverage technology to help them slow down the disease progression.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'd love to hear from you around the ways in which we have sort of the digital technologies compared to the traditional clinical visits that we obviously have, and how does the digitalized personalized care compare in terms of meeting specific needs for Parkinson's patients versus the traditional sort of clinical visits right now?
So typically the individuals with Parkinson's, they get to see their neurologist once or twice a year, and then have occasional visits with their neurophysical therapist. So there is a very discontinuous fragmented care right now. Through the digital care platform delivery, we can ensure individuals have a continuous network of experts. They have a way to connect with their team, connect and communicate their healthcare information, their just through the self-tracking, using their wearable sensors, using the passive data to effectively track their progress, track their presentation, and also using tele-rehabilitation, using gaming platform to help them regularly challenge their day-to-day exercise routine, help them better manage it, and help them progress based on their goals and function. So it makes it more seamless to deliver more of an integrative care delivery through incorporating combination of tools, apps, and also having an opportunity for them to better self-manage through learning, which can be easily delivered through online care platform, or just through recorded video series, which they can learn and then practice those skill sets needed for their management.
No, that's brilliant. And I know we don't really have too much time to spend with you, unfortunately, but I definitely want to talk about the integration piece that you're seeing, and how digital health solutions for Parkinson's care can be integrated with sort of the traditional medical treatments right now, and also the therapies that are involved.
So this is still in the process, but the goal and the hope is to have individuals in between their medical visits have an integration of digital care solutions where they can focus on lifestyle changes, exercise, Parkinson specific exercise training, coaching, and learning of like better management of their symptoms and strategies on how can they take care of their conditions and better manage. So there's a lot of role which they have to play, and it's changing and it's evolving with time. So in order to help them effectively navigate that, digital care solution in between doctor's visit, right, as early as possible following their diagnosis, will be really crucial, that because that will change their trajectory. It will help them better manage and slow down the disease, because it's only through a integrative and comprehensive care individuals can do it, and technology plays a very important role by providing them great amount of resources based on where they are, what their learning resources is, and what they are ready for. So understanding their condition, understanding their readiness to get started, accordingly giving them the right tools based on their goals, based on their function, will help individuals take charge of their condition.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important. Thanks so much, Apurva, for shining a light on that, and the work that you're doing as well around Parkinson's care too. Thank you so much, Apurva. I'm sorry we don't have more time to chat with you, but those of you in the audience that want to connect with Apurva, we do welcome you to connect with her via her LinkedIn that's in the chat, and to also find out more about, of course, UCSF and also Beyond Rehab as well. But thanks so much for coming on the program, Apurva, and we'll hopefully see you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
And we are coming up close to to rounding off our first hour here at the Digital Health Symposium for for July, and we're not on August yet. And I just want to remind everybody before we go into our next segment that we are going to be hosting the HITLAB Innovators Summit at the end of the year. Traditionally, it's the week after Thanksgiving. This time it's going to be December 2nd to 4th, because Thanksgiving is a little bit later. It's going to be at the Microsoft Tech Center in the heart of New York City, just off of Times Square in that first week of December. It should be a really wonderful event. You can check out the list of speakers we already have lined up, as well as the sponsors and the partners that we have that are going to be supporting the event. If you do wish to either attend or support the event as a sponsor, please do reach out to me and Stan, and we'd be happy to chat with you about that. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to my friend and colleague, Ansley Bowen, Community Development Manager for HITLAB, who's going to be interviewing Joanne Waters from IMC. Ansley, over to you.
It's my pleasure to talk to Joanne Waters today. Joanne is the General Manager and Director for Intelligent Devices. So Joanne, thanks so much for joining us today. If you'd love to give a quick introduction to our audience.
Hi, Ainsley. Very nice to see you, and thank you so much for the invitation. I'm Joanne Waters, as you have mentioned, and I've been working in the adherence technology field for well over 17 years with the IMC group. And today we're here to talk about technology and how digital smart devices can actually help health innovation. I look forward to our chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll get right into it. So how do you perceive the current digital transformation within the health ecosystem, and what role do smart devices play in this transformation?
Yeah, so lots of different ways, right? So we see a lot of action since especially the pandemic when everyone was, had to stay at home, et cetera. And clinical trials and drug development still went on and patients still needed medication and we still had to continue. So, a lot of pivoting happened then. Our company in particular was instrumental prior to pandemic of offering what we would call like a decentralized type of trial, whereby patients can actually still participate and we can also help them with their medication management at home. So the trials have really changed in the clinical world where, you can come back to a clinic site, but you actually can now offer what they call a hybrid solution for decentralized trials, allow for what they call also remote monitoring. So patients in the pre-pandemic stage, they would come back to a clinic site with medication and use that medication, and then they would do the reconciliation, et cetera, at the site. Nowadays, we can actually do all of that remotely, and we see a lot of what we would call temperature sensitive products, like with a lot of the injectables that are now at home with patients. And so there's a lot of that monitoring that also has to become part of a critical supply chain. So there's lots of digital innovations and a lot of transformation when it comes to how are we changing from going to a site all the time, less frequent sites, more time at home with the patient. So I think that's where technology really comes in, and using things like smart devices and smart packaging that really help to elevate that experience for the patient, but also the care team.
And on the topic where you mentioned kind of that innovation piece, how has your company adapted its smart device solutions to be able to meet the evolving needs of the healthcare industry amidst the rapid digital advancements?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you can look back, even 5 years ago, people were not used to what the word a sensor was. They weren't necessarily used to this sort of contactless method of communicating, right? So the pandemic brought an awareness, let's say, and an ease of adoption for such things as Apple Pay and Google Pay, where you literally don't have to exchange money, you don't have to do anything, you just tap something, right? So in our world of technology, that's what we call a communication portal. So that communicates data from smart packaging and smart devices, and you can do that at home. So that's really where the sort of adoption of patients to know, oh, that's all you have to do is tap it just like that, and it makes it so much easier to communicate that data that patients have to help keep them on track with medicine, but also it helps our care teams understand how patients are taking medicine and how do we help them get back on track if they are falling off with their medication and treatment protocol.
And as you kind of mentioned, looking back at the past to now, what are your actual predictions for the future of smart devices in the healthcare industry, particularly in the list of ongoing digital transformations and emerging technologies like you mentioned?
Oh, yeah. So as an example, right? There are still many professions that allow sort of a hybrid employer relationship where employees can actually maybe work remotely 3 days a week. Maybe they don't have to go into the office as much either. So if you look at that in the context of running a clinical trial as an example, if we can do that with our employees, why not keep that and pivot that with patients and going back to a clinic site, right? So the patient is just like an employer, they are doing the job. They don't have to go back to the clinic site as often, right? So that's actually, enrollment is one of the toughest things in a clinical trial is to get patients to participate, right? So if we can help them by accommodating that, and then, the analogy as well, if you have an employee that you really want to keep engaged, obviously, you want to, compromise, okay, we'll let you do a couple, days at remote, and then you come back into the office. Same idea as patients, right? And what's interesting is a lot of the Medicare, the CMS, they realize this remote therapeutic monitoring, this RTM, and all of these incentives are helping with the CMS system. And if we can keep patients from not being readmitted back to emerge, et cetera, that's a huge cost savings to healthcare. And using all of these digital technologies to help is not, it's just, it's a normal thing now, right? We just have to do it as we normally do. So that's what's really cool about technology. But in supply chain, it's a huge thing because, you know, look at the Ozempic as an example. They're having a difficult time to keep up, but they're also having a difficult time to track where that medication is. And in these types of smart packaging solutions, that's where that really shines, is to bring that visibility and that last mile right to the patient's home. So it's really, really exciting time, actually.
Yeah, well, I know we, unfortunately don't have a lot of time on our session today. I could talk to you for much longer, as always, Joanne. But I love those thoughts on that. I think hybrid is definitely the way of the future, kind of having that collaboration of, being in office, being in the clinic, and also kind of being able to do things from the luxury of your own home. So, I think this is a great conversation. I would love to have you on again in the future. But thank you so much again, Joanne, for your time today.
All right. Thank you. All right. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Joanne. And before I hand it back over to Jerry, we are at the top of our second hour here. So we have the book giveaway. All right, everyone. The first attendee to have the correct answer in the chat box will win. Here is the question. In what year was the World Health Organization founded? We give everyone a couple of seconds to put their answers in the chat. Gonna let the reveal the answer in 3, 2, 1. It is A, 1948. And it looks like Josie is the winner. So we will be in contact with you shortly. Please do reach out to us with your email and the private chat on Zoom, and we will make sure that you get your book. Alrighty, I will now hand it back over to Jerry.
Congratulations to you, Gozi, for winning the book giveaway for this hour. Do make sure that you do respond to the team when they reach out to you about getting that book over to you. And as a great interview there with Joanne as well. Always great to have her on the program. And as we go into our second hour here of the Digital Health Symposium for August, we're not going to lose any steam in terms of the caliber of speakers that we have on the program. It's my pleasure to welcome David Salmon, former global head of digital strategy at AstraZeneca. He's going to be talking to us today about digital waves in healthcare and looking at the future of pharma and biotechnology, of which I'm sure David, if you looked at his LinkedIn profile ahead of time, has an extensive amount of experience in digital and the life sciences industry. David, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. We can see you just great. David, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the program today. I know you've got a lot to say, and we'll try and cover as much as we can in this short 10-minute span that we have. But for those who aren't familiar with you in the crowd today, we'd love to get a quick 30-second, if you can, introduction as to your background and what you do now.
Sure. So I'm originally trained as a neuroscientist, but I've been in industry now for 25 years. Most of that time has been spent building and running digital teams across industry. I have spent a lot of my time in larger organizations, pharma, medical device, and diagnostics, but also spent a fair amount of time with startups such as Livongo, and I have a small side consultancy that I've been running for the better part of a decade. That's focused on mostly on pro bono consulting with not-for-profit organizations that need assistance with digital. So.
No, that's wonderful. And yeah, I'm sure that a lot of the folks here would love to connect with you. David's details will be in the chat, so please do connect with him to definitely continue the conversation if we run out of time, which I'm sure we will. But we'll get right into it, David, and we'd love to dive right into the insights you have around the strategies right now and the correct strategies for integrating the different digital health solutions into the sort of pharma biotech product offerings right now, and the challenges that you're seeing in implementing those types of digital health technologies within, of course, what's right now a highly regulated industry, and how can that be overcome? from your point of view?
Well, I'll start by saying you can't overcome it. Nor should you technically want to overcome it. I'd say the key to deriving and building value by leveraging digital health technologies, especially in the context of, say, a large pharma organization, is in accepting that it's a beautiful constraint, and learning to not only work around it, but also find ways to use it to drive innovation within your organization. So I'll challenge the nature of the question off the bat. But when we talk about strategy, I think the real key with this for all of us is the most important element to strategy for how to leverage digital health within a large pharma organization is in staying laser focused on why you're there, what you're doing. You don't do it for its own sake. You are doing it precisely to help drive patient outcomes at scale through the best application of your therapeutics within that patient population. Anything else is a distraction, and the challenge with that is you oftentimes get caught between sort of two poles. On the one side, you'll have a part of the organization that fully understands that anything that's not focused on your core therapeutics is a distraction, but they also will mistakenly think that digital health is just one of those distractions. You've got another part of the organization that is there, oftentimes brought in to help solve for this, that is there pushing very hard for it, but it's very easy to get sucked into this notion that it exists and should exist for its own sake. Pharmaceutical companies are ultimately there to innovate new medications, new therapeutics, and to get them into as many of the right patients and to drive patient outcomes as possible. And so you have to stay laser focused on that. And strategy is ultimately about making those investment choices. So I'd start by couching it in those terms.
Yeah, I mean, you've had such extensive sort of experience, obviously, like I said, within pharma, biotech, and different organizations and so forth. And you've done a lot of work, obviously, in the digital space with these organizations. We'd love to hear about sort of like the most and more important ways in which today's pharma life science organizations are changing, and also what they need to do to change to become what we would, I suppose we would term digital first in this day and age.
Sure. The challenge isn't the technology. The technology is there. The challenge is how the organization adapts itself to leverage that. There are some disciplines that we need to master in the industry, and the organizations that master these disciplines are the ones that are going to successfully continue to leverage this. Not just proceed from expensive and flashy experiment to expensive and flashy experiment. The disciplines that they've got to master, and I mentioned, I think I kind of indicated initially, strategy is critical. There's also a really critical element around understanding partnership. I think this is something that we've struggled with in the industry for the past decade, at least when it comes to digital health. We haven't figured out what we want to build ourselves, what we want to buy, how we want to partner. And when we go to partnership, oftentimes we treat partnership like it's an extended version of vendor relationship, rather than having the ability to go to the table and craft new models for partnership. I would also say governance. It's a dirty word in pharma. Oftentimes, especially within commercial organizations who hear governance and think somebody else wants to put more handcuffs on me. But I would say that good governance doesn't do this. Good governance, well structured, actually frees you up by locating decision making and good visibility to what's going on in your organization in ways that make it easier to go faster in a lot of ways. So I'd say those are three critical organizational disciplines you've got to master. That and the experts. So I'm presuming some of the folks on this are digital experts, and so I'm not telling them anything you guys don't know. One of the most important things is not just formal and structural, it's also attitudinal. You cannot be successful in this transformation unless you have compassion for the different capacities for change across an organization. Unless you have that change compassion, unless you have the humility to understand that you're coming in to facilitate the core mission of the pharmaceutical organization, not turn the pharmaceutical organization into some future gleaming city of your imagination. You will succeed if you can embrace that humility. You will fail if you can't.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and I like that. I like what you posed there around sort of the governance piece. That's so important. Not just on in the pharma industry, but I think I think just in general across the healthcare industry itself. And I think just to wrap up, David, we'd love to hear from you, especially the buyers and investors in this current audience as well, around the sort of next 5 to 10 years in terms of, you were talking about the technology isn't the problem because it is being developed and it is there. But, what have you seen, or what do you foresee in terms of, what the pharma and life science industry needs to leverage in terms of digital technologies and how it can reshape the healthcare delivery in the next sort of decade or so, and what technologies aren't on the radar right now, which I think a lot of people would love to would love to get some insights on.
I'd say some of the answer is honestly going to be quite obvious. It all tends to center, at least for pharma, around better and more effective use of data, how we acquire it, how we utilize it. And so, whether you're talking about on the R&D side, literally our investment in data on the R&D side is the highest value investments that we tend to truly make in terms of return. Every piece of data that we generate as a pharmaceutical company in the industry is critical. It's more critical than it's more critical and more valuable even than the customer data on the marketing side. And so everything that we do around AI over the next few years is going to be critical. That means figuring out how we're going to approach that as individual organizations. And also, and I would say, I'm going to step outside of my pharma framework for just 1 second and say, at the end of the day, the value chain of data creation and putting the ability to use that data directly in the hands of the healthcare providers is probably the most important thing we use these innovations for. Everybody and his brother can invent algorithms, but if the doctors aren't using these algorithms in care, then we're not seeing the lift in care outcomes. And that's the most important thing. So I would say over the next 5 to 10 years, what we are going to be looking at and going to be seeing, I think, is figuring out how we can utilize, how we build these algorithms, but more importantly, how we validate them and how we put these algorithms into the hands of physicians and the care provider network so that they can use them as a part of daily care. That's going to be the single most important area of innovation the next 5 to 10 years. As a matter of fact, I'll be honest, I've gotten to a stage where I kind of dislike the term digital health, and I tend to think more in terms of precision healthcare, because everything that we do ultimately is serving to try to drive that increased precision, I think. In terms of technologies that are not on the radar right now, I would not say 5 to 10 years, but but somewhere out there, somebody is thinking about the pre-work that's got to be done for and to support newer models of computing. So I'd say we're still 30 years out. Applications of quantum computing in healthcare, but as we've learned with AI, if we had started thinking about actively building and using knowledge maps or other tools that make machine learning more effective, if we'd already spent more time and investment on getting our data sources integrated and building in some consistent standards across our industry, then we'd be much further ahead than we are. So what I would say is let's go ahead and understand the problems that we know exist today and invest in those, because those problems are not going to get smaller. They're going to become much more outsized as we increase computing power and as we increase the ability to reach and embed these algorithms and these capabilities into the hands of care providers and patients.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the audience definitely do agree with you. There's a couple of emojis that went up and some comments is also in the chat, with complete agreement with what you were saying. David, thanks so much for coming on. Sorry you couldn't spend more time with you. We really appreciate your insights, and I think the audience definitely did as well. And of course, we invite everyone to connect with you, David, on LinkedIn. We did put David's LinkedIn in the chat, so do please connect with him afterwards. And David, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your insights with us.
Certainly, I appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to move swiftly on here over to Sally Frank from Microsoft, who's going to be interviewed by our very own Ansley Bowen. Ansley.
I just wanted to quickly introduce Sally Frank. Thank you so much for being on with us today. Sally is the WW lead of Health and Life Sciences at Microsoft for Startups. Sally, if you could please give a quick introduction to our audience, and then we'll hop right into our questions.
Sure, and thanks for inviting me today, Ansley. So Sally Frank, the global lead for Health and Life Sciences at Microsoft for Startups, where we are focused on helping early stage companies grow and scale using our technology. Been in role for about 4 years when we started our industry approach within the Microsoft for Startups. Been there at Microsoft for about 8.5 years. Have had worked with a startup, worked in a startup, have had 2 businesses. So I know the entrepreneurial journey and the challenges and rewards of both sides of it.
Well, again, thank you so much for being here today and taking time out of your, I'm sure, very busy schedule. And so kind of getting started here, could you describe how you facilitate partnerships between startups and health and life science industries, and how Microsoft accelerates their development and growth?
Sure. So the startup program is really focused on 2 primary areas. One is technical excellence, which I think everyone understands and expects out of Microsoft. So through a variety of digital experiences, training, connections with Azure technical advisors, we help our startups use our technology in a way that enables them to become enterprise ready. So that's area number 1. And then area number 2 is we also help early stage organizations build their business. So whether you think from the perspective of enabling them to use our tools like Office 365 and Teams to host their meetings, or Dynamic CRM and all of that, we provide those opportunities, as well as opportunities to join us at first party events that we host, as well as industry events. We do connections directly between some of the startups and our enterprise customers, and we're really trying to help both the startups grow, but also our enterprise customers actually accelerate their innovation by buying solutions that can help them specifically in certain areas where they're looking to innovate and expand.
And when you're talking about that business strategy kind of portion of it, how do you approach the business strategy planning and the go-to-market development to ensure that these startups achieve their short-term revenue goals while also still aligning with their long-term visions as well?
Sure. And it is really important to balance, like, what do we need to do today versus what is our ultimate goal? Mm-hmm. So the way our program operates is that it's open to everyone. Microsoft for Startups is open to everyone, whether you're at the ideate stage or you've achieved product market fit. And so as you go through the program, additional resources are opened up to you so that you get what you need at the time you need it. Now, when we talk about the business engagement and the go-to-market, there is a top tier of our program called Pegasus, where we identify what we think are future market makers that reach certain criteria. And then with them, we do bespoke engagements, both with trying to get them on the marketplace, so the transaction with our enterprise customers is easy, but also helping them kind of finalize and refine that value proposition. Teaching them how to sell both within the Microsoft ecosystem and beyond, and making sure that we help them stay abreast of trends both in the industry as well as the technical changes that are happening, it seems, almost daily, especially when we think about the changes in AI and generative AI.
And also in talking about like the relationships that I'm sure that you form with all these different founders and VCs and other industry stakeholders to foster this ongoing collaboration, how do you manage those relationships and still be able to support the startups and health and life science ecosystems?
Yes, it's a lot, and it's very both invigorating and sometimes overwhelming. But I think the focus on the mission of the startups really helps drive what we do, especially from a go-to-market perspective. Mm-hmm. So helping them understand who they need to be connected to, both, again, within Microsoft as well as beyond. We have part of our program, this thing called the Expert Network, and that is a group of a lot of Microsoft folks that will help our startups take half-hour calls from anybody who asks. And the idea there is that some of those people are business development people, some of them are industry people, some of them are engineering and technical people. So there is a sense of self-determination as to who you connect with, how focused they are in the areas that are important to you, so that you can move the ball forward. And that is much more kind of scaling across the entire startup program that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I also wanted to ask you, in what ways do you also leverage Microsoft's technical capabilities to be able to enhance the innovation and technical excellence of these startups in the health and life science sectors?
So Microsoft is very fortunate in that we have sets of teams that are, in addition to like our Azure engineering team, that focus specifically on health data services, data and AI services that are specific and designed for healthcare, whether it's focused on genomics, whether it's focused on DICOM or FHIR. And so what we are trying to do is make sure that the startups in our program are educated about those services, so they don't have the perception that they have to build these APIs or things like that, but they can really leverage what we've built to accelerate their growth. So it's all a function of kind of staying up to date with what we're doing, and also making sure that they avail themselves of all the training and assets that we offer.
Absolutely. Well, Sally, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time today. And a lot of people in the chat are saying how great it is to see you on our program, and also saying how nice that you're so responsive in a timely manner with any questions. So, of course, we'll have your LinkedIn in the chat, and feel free to reach out to Sally with any other questions or connect with her via LinkedIn. We hope to have you on again in the future, Sally, and also we'll post the link to your book as well in the chat as well. So
great.
Thank you again,
Thank you
Sally.
so much.
It's been a pleasure. And make sure to check out Microsoft for Startups as well for everyone who's interested. Of course,
yes,
startups.
It's startups.microsoft.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sally. Appreciate your time today. Before we move on to our next speaker, I just wanted to quickly make an announcement about our Innovators Summit. I know that you've heard about it a good amount today, but it would be really great for you to check out our website, look at all of our speakers and tracks that we have going on in the fall. It's going to be December 2nd through the 4th at the Microsoft Tech Center. If you're interested in sponsoring or speaking, you can go to hitlab.org, get involved, and you can actually apply to be a sponsor or a speaker. So definitely check that out. The link will be in the chat. And without further ado, I'll turn it back over to Jerry.
It's my pleasure and honor as well, in Stan's absence, to welcome onto the program Carl Rosen, friend of the lab and global fellow with the Breakthrough Alliance, and I'll be moderating this chat with him as well, exploring how AI can interface with medical devices, especially based on Carl's experience. Carl, are you there?
Yes, yes. Hi. Hi, Jerry. I'll just give you a little background. So I'm in Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska. And I want to thank Stan for the invite and to you as well. So I'm an ophthalmologist. I do oculoplastics in Alaska and neuro-ophthalmology. I'm the president of Ophthalmic Associates, which is the largest multi-specialty practice in Alaska. And I was also the founder and CEO of Call Doctor, which I exited from. I'm still involved as a board member, but with Call Doctor, we leveraged EMTALA, which is the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, basically scheduling and organizing doctors who are hospital-based on call for all specialties. And we really created a much better network so that communication could occur not only within the hospital on the floors, but to other hospitals and facilities throughout the state of Alaska. And we connected, we merged the military, the native, and the private sectors, and really to improve patient care, clinical medicine. So I'm on boots on the ground. You've had some great speakers, but I'm really in the trenches. And, I looked at AI as a guy who is taking care of folks and managing 9 other ophthalmologists, optometrists, and a physician assistant. And I looked at it and I said, what's really the bottom line? What's the mission? The mission is, our goal is to take care of patients and to do it better, more effectively, more efficiently. We want to improve the patient experience. We want the patients and their families to say, wow, that was great. I understand my diagnosis. I understand my treatment plan. I understand what I need to do, how to modify maybe my behavior, my lifestyle. And so how can we do that more effectively and better? Well, we got this great new technology called artificial intelligence based on algorithms and machine learning and supervised, unsupervised, reinforced, weighted probabilities, that with more data, you have better outcomes. You have a better differential diagnosis. You have a better assessment. And I said, this technology is amazing. Let's see if we can use it. Now, to be fair, it's really not happening yet. It's more theoretical. The bigger institutions are using it, like Google, Spotify, Netflix, Yahoo, YouTube. They're using the algorithms already, but I represent the community. I represent the mom and pop doc shops who take care of patients locally. And it still hasn't hit that yet. But I have set up a pilot project after making a pitch to my partners and saying, look, let's allocate a small amount of resources and funds to this so that we can assess whether or not this really can improve patient care. And I think it can. But first came the pitch, and first leadership has to define the project, and it trickles down to your staff, to the administration, and ultimately to your patients, because your patients also have to consent to this. And so we looked at the workflow and we said, how does this all work? Well, a patient has a problem. They log into the website, they log into their smartphone, they get to the practice, or they call up to make an appointment. You have a check-in. You come in, you discuss your problem, the doctor sees you, you have testing to validate the problem or to assure that your line of thinking is correct or not. And then you have an assessment, you create referral letters, you offer an explanation to the patient, you schedule surgery, you schedule a follow-up. It may require a hospital visit, or it can stay in the community and locally within your office. And that's how the system works. And then you make an exit. And then there's the copay, there's the insurance aspect, because we are running a business. And that's how the system works. So how can AI integrate into this? Really, what is AI? AI is essentially having a really smart assistant look over your shoulder, dive into your electronic medical record or whatever data you've collected, decide if there are drug interactions, if there are allergies, the patient's past medical history, their past surgical history, their family history, maybe even genomics, and optimizing that data collection to offer you help in coming up with a differential diagnosis and deciding on a treatment plan. And
I'd love to talk about security there, though, Carl. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Sure. I'm sorry. I'm getting excited here.
No worries. No, I didn't want to interrupt you. You were definitely on with a good flow, but I think some of the audience might want to know, when you were talking about sort of patient data and use with AI around that. So, what are the measures you think are necessary to ensure that sort of security with patient data when you're using AI?
Sure. And it all starts with the patient consent. So that has to be established and that has to be worked out. That flow has to be worked out. But when it comes to security, you need obviously strong encryption. You need regular software updates. You need to know who your vendors are. You need to have an IT team. You may need to learn a new skill set, and your staff may need to learn a new skill set to ensure that. You have to watch out for phishing, for ransomware, for malware. You don't want to click on this executable file if it's going to cause trouble. And so there has to be training for your staff. And this is all stuff that we all know. There needs to be multi-factor authentication to restrict access. You must have privileges, regular audits, and we want to put guardrails around the system so that we do understand compliance, we do understand HIPAA, we do want to protect patient information, but we also need a way to use that information to send to other docs who are outside of your facility, because that communication is so vital and so critical, and it doesn't happen optimally in the real world. So AI can be used to improve that so that we can communicate better to, again, effectuate better patient care. You do need robust data governance, so that's absolutely imperative. But on the other hand, there's this balance. Too much regulation, then your hands are tied behind your back, and you're fighting a fight with no arms. So there's got to be a good balance. It's got to be common sense, and I think this has to be left to the doctor and the patient. And I think that discussion needs to be done, because if my hand is tied behind my back and I can't share the data or I can't access the data, I'm just not gonna be as good a doctor as I need to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So again, so anyway, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and I think some of the audience members in the chat and the emojis are agreeing with you there on that front, especially Carl. But on that note about sort of the doctors and the physicians and the healthcare professionals that do have their hands tied behind their backs in these instances, we'd love to hear about sort of the impact of AI on those roles and responsibilities then on healthcare professionals in that sort of setting. In that, on that thread.
Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, AI is here to automate processes. So number one, you have to understand your processes. You have to have discussions with your partners in your group. And sometimes you actually have to pretend that you're a patient. You got to walk in the front door or make the phone call and understand what that workflow is like. To actually go through it yourself is eye-opening and sometimes eye-popping. And I'm an ophthalmologist, so I know about eye-opening. little joke. But so you want AI to have an impact, a positive impact on not only your patients, your staff, your administration, but yourself. You want to reduce doctor burnout. It is tough being a doctor. I can tell you, I've been doing it for 30 years. So I'm a clinician, I'm a diagnostician, but I'm also a surgeon. And so I've taken call for 25 years, 30 years, 3 a.m. You know what it's like being woken up at 3 a.m. in Anchorage, Alaska in January? It's chilly outside.
Yeah, I can imagine it's not pleasant.
It's difficult. So, but I've done this. Look, I knew what I was getting into when I signed up for this, okay? I enjoy this, all right? I have no problem, but I just want to make it easier for my colleagues, the younger generation. And again, what is the mission? It is to improve the patient experience.
Yeah.
To be better, smarter, and more facile with less burdens, less obstacles. and we want to do it cost effectively, which
Yeah.
again we need to look at. But I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I interrupted you earlier when you were sort of moving over to sort of the costs and benefits, with AI implementation, in medical offices and stuff. But what are the potential sort of cost savings and benefits?
So again, AI, it's a beautiful technology. The algorithms can help you be more predictive, and predictive can drive down costs if we know where is waste, where is potentially abuse. Hopefully none, but there may be. So we can ferret that out and really get into the practice management side, not only the clinical side, but the practice management side, which sometimes doctors just don't see. I mean, when you go to medical school, you have a population of people who are really smart and intense, but they have gaps. And they have gaps on the business side, on the balance side, on the profit loss side sometimes, and you need to learn that skill in order to run a community-based office to take care of patients within the community. Now, the hospital is a whole different thing. They have a team of MBAs, et cetera, but in the community, and there's still about 25 or 30% of people who go into private practice, you need that skill set in order to be, effective and to keep your doors open. But I do think that the cost versus benefit right now, again, it's still theoretical, but you had a speaker who say quantum computing is going to take 30 years. I don't see it that way. I think it's going to be here sooner than you think. And I think that it's incumbent upon us to be prepared to understand this. And I think that it's really going to be a sea change. It's going to be incredible. I'm super excited about it. I really am.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you just mentioned there about sort of the difference between sort of hospitals and sort of the smaller medical offices and stuff. I want to talk to you I want you to talk to the audience, I think, about the adoption rates and stuff, and in terms of the rate of how quickly AI technologies are being adopted by medical offices and what the factors are that sort of influence that adoption rate.
So there's a difference again, Jerry, between the enterprise hospitals like the Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic, Kaiser, as I mentioned before. And look, AI first versus traditional. I mean, look at traditional. Traditional, you can go back in time and say Nokia was traditional. AI first was Apple. So maybe we really do need to think about that, right? And I'm not, look, I think Nokia was great, but they had, multiple phones, and Apple just had one, the iPhone, and it made a difference. And sort of, I think we need to look at what's coming and integrate that into our thought processes. And if you have partners, pitch to them, educate them. But I think adoption rates, there's got to be a willingness of the healthcare providers to embrace that change and to play a role, because without doctors, it's the system doesn't work. So you can't forget about the doctors. And those are my constituents. So you need that, but you also need a tech savvy organization. You need good vendors, you need good technology. And, there was that curve, the S curve, I forget, let me see. I think it was Everett Rogers, wasn't that right? He created that curve in the 60s. It showed the early adopters versus the laggards. And you have this steep rise, and then you have a plateau. We're just in the early part of that curve, But I do think that it would behoove you and your organization to at least investigate this technology.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just in wrapping up, Carl, we'd love to hear about some of the future sort of trends that you're seeing in terms of what you envision right now from your position as the future role of AI in sort of the transformation for
thank you, Jerry.
medical office operations and patient care.
Right. And again, I don't represent these big enterprise systems. I interface with them, but I represent the small community office. And, I network with the local community, with, the cardiologists in my community, with the plastic surgeon, with the ENT docs, with the retina docs within ophthalmology itself, dermatology, GI, et cetera. the future is terribly exciting. It will play a role in predictive healthcare, identifying health issues, drug interactions to reduce medical errors. Telemedicine is still a thing that is being developed. Remote monitoring, virtual care, at-home care. Imagine actually being able to take care of a patient at home with good peripheral devices where you could actually look at the retina, for diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma, or macular degeneration. For ophthalmology, those are the big three. If you could actually do that so that, your grandmother doesn't have to get into the car and travel to the office, how great would that be? We talk about precision medicine. This is all under the rubric, under the arc of AI, personalized treatment plans. Again, it's going to be fantastic. I see it coming down the road, and I want to be part of it.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Carl, thanks so much. There's been a whole load of chatter in the open chat here around AI. I think it's usually one of our more interesting topics and definitely topics that the audience like to have a lot of discussion about. And if you do have anything that you want to chat about with Carl, we did put Carl's information in the chat, so you can feel free to connect with him after the session today and continue this very exciting and energetic conversation around AI and the future transformation of healthcare. But Carl, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate
thanks, Jerry. And I just want to tell the audience, I'm a boots on the ground guy, so I look forward to just having discussions with everybody. This is fantastic stuff. And again, Jerry, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to Stan, and I look forward to further discussions.
No, it's a pleasure, Carl. Thanks so much. Okie dokie. All right. So we have a couple of things coming on right now before we move on to our next panel. Very quickly, before we go on to some audience interaction that I know is much needed. Now we're about halfway through, or just over halfway through, actually, our 3-hour-long digital health symposium for today. I want to remind everybody the applications are open tomorrow for the Breakthrough Alliance competition, part 2 for 2024. They'll be opening around about 9 a.m. tomorrow. Free to apply to and free to participate in if you are selected as one of our finalists. The link is in the chat to go to if you want to apply. The applications aren't very long, and it's a really good opportunity for you guys, if you are founders, to potentially pitch at the symposium, at the summit in December. But we have a couple of polls here. We want to hear from you in terms of your viewpoints. The poll should be coming up now. Fancy has started it up. Our first poll here is, which digital health trend do you believe will have the most significant impact in the next 5 years? We've had a couple of discussions around sort of the next 5 to 10 years of transformation within healthcare from both Carl just now and David Salmon and Vic Tandon from Blue Shield earlier on. But we definitely love to hear from you guys in terms of what you think the trend is that's going to be affecting the current ecosystem within the next half decade or so. So we have a couple of folks coming through now. It looks like AI machine learning, which we were just talking about right now, is coming out on top as the trend that's going to be impacting in the next 5 years, which is totally understandable. It's one of the more energetic conversations we normally have. And the other poll here around what type of digital health innovations would you like to see more of personally right now, whether it's your own personal use or that of use in the actual large healthcare organizations. And it looks like we're almost tied here, actually, with patient engagement platforms and wearable devices, which makes a lot of sense in terms of making sure you're able to, of course, share data and communication with the providers, and of course wearable devices that a lot of us use on a day-to-day basis as well. Number 3 poll here is, which fitness wearable do you currently use or do you see as being the most useful for 2024? And it's unsurprisingly the Apple Watch with Oura Ring and Fitbit just close behind. So fitness trackers are definitely on the menu for being the most useful this year. And I think we have one more poll here of which type of wearable technology do you believe will have the most significant impact on healthcare in the next 10 years. And it looks like it's medical wearables coming out on top. So I think that definitely gives us a little bit of insights as to where everybody in the audience is looking right now and in very, very near future in terms of the transformation of healthcare. And it looks like it is really wearables, which we'll be tackling, by the way, in September in a bit more closer detail for that symposium. So do keep an eye out for when registration is open for that, and do tune in when we do tackle those topics at that meeting. In the meantime, please do put your details in the chat and do continue to converse. There was an amazing back and forth earlier, I think, from Richard and Alexandra in the chat around AI. So please feel free to continue the chatter in the open chat while I welcome our next moderator for the next two sessions, Amy West, who's head of US Digital Transformation at Novo Nordisk, and also a board member of the Breakthrough Alliance that I just mentioned earlier, as well as our chair for the Women's Health Tech Initiative as well. Many titles for you, Amy, there. And I'll hand over the virtual mic over to you, and you'll be interviewing Don Jones.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And really excited to be a part of the symposium this month, and thrilled to be joined by Donald Jones, who is a globally recognized leader in digital medicine, technology, in the health services space, with a really amazing breadth, depth, and many years really driving transformation in healthcare. But I don't want to speak for him. He can speak about his background better than I can. So Don, thank you for joining. You want to share a little background and bio on yourself before we jump into some of the questions?
Sure, Amy, thank you. And thanks for the Columbia University HITLAB participation. Appreciate that. I'm just going to summarize the headlines. 25 years in emergency medical services, running the largest company in the world, building and managing medical practices totaling over 40,000 doctors, working with many companies through 11 and a half years at Qualcomm, over 2,000. And then the last 5 years, having started a venture capital firm with Takeda called TDV. And working on the boards and advisory to many companies, as well as Fortune 500 companies as well. So lots of different diversity in my background. I'm a bioengineer, lawyer, and business school graduate by background. I try not to get involved in the clinical side too much. I try and stay on how do we improve the consumer or patient experience in my work.
Well, that's amazing. We're very fortunate to have you here with us today. And you clearly are an expert in this space and have probably seen many different trends come and go over the years. And we want to talk a little bit during this session about digital wireless technologies and how it's revolutionizing healthcare delivery and patient care. And as a follow-up to the prior conversation and some of the polling that went on, there's all the talk about AI, whether it's in healthcare or really any other industry. And from your perspective, we're hearing a lot about ambient AI in the exam room clinic setting, which is great, I think, when it comes to capturing the patient information for the chart in a very ambient way, and help facilitate and create efficiencies with the documentation process that are part of the workflow. But from your perspective, what other opportunities are you seeing for things like ambient AI in the clinic setting or in the exam room?
So right now I'm tracking in excess of 50 companies offering ambient AI. So it's kind of a hot space, attracted a lot of money, and frankly, I don't predict a great result for the core business model, which is charge per doctor for basic SOAP note preparation and EHR integration. I actually predict that value proposition is going to zero, meaning it's going to be given away. And the reason is there's a lot of other value propositions that actually have a lot more value to them. And I'd like to think of them as, where are the near-term ROIs versus the long-term ROIs? So there are a number of folks actually talking about how we can improve the quality of the medicine, clinical decision-making, et cetera. I put those in the long-term ROI equations, partly because they're harder to measure the impact, and the financial impacts are distributed among all the players, the payers, the healthcare systems, and the providers. The things I'm more interested in right now, at least over the next 3 or 4 years, are the things that have immediate ROI. And this is where I see the change. So things like prior authorization, automating that process of prior authorization, just something as simple as completing the RXs. If the conversation includes the physician saying, I'm going to give you a prescription for ampicillin, well, the prescription can actually be completed and ready to go for one click of the button rather than taking additional time. The real opportunity, and if you look at the Kaiser study that came out not too long ago, showed an hour and 15 minutes of savings per doctor per day. And then on top of that, you saw a class come out and say that the health systems expect to deploy ambient AI in the exam rooms in 58% of the systems in America this year. So this is the fastest adoption of technology in healthcare that we've probably ever seen. But as we move down the list, I see super bill preparation, automatic coding, quality assurance, preventative care recommendations, protocol adherence analysis, medication recommendations per appropriateness, per personalization, and by formulary, insights into potential selections of medical devices and pharmaceuticals, customer satisfaction, physician reviews. How is the physician actually conducting themselves? Has this physician got good bedside manner? These are kinds of things that health systems are going to be able to do with the AI. These are all the things that we're going to squeeze the economics out in the next few years. The economics of are we going to make a big difference in healthcare costs long term are going to take a much longer to measure. And as a result, that's not where I'm focusing my time or effort right now, because there's immediate ROIs to obtain that can be squeezed out in the year you deploy.
And from your perspective, when we're talking about how AI is being used to support a lot of efficiencies, when we think about time savings for the clinician and things like that, do you have any perspective or insight on how the actual clinicians are feeling about the efficiency involved? So yeah, now they have more time back, but is that time now being spent seeing more patients and being sort of pressed with doing more now that, or doing other things that they didn't have the time to do before, and it's actually creating more pressure for them? Or is it sort of giving them a little relief from their workload? I'm just curious if you heard any feedback on that based on
I have. Yeah, no, that's a great question. I have. And I think if you want to look at the most significant divider in the marketplace, it's look at who your employer is. If I get an hour and a half or so, plus or minus, of new free time, and my employer pays me on a salary, chances are I'm going to be asked to become more productive. If I'm in private practice, I can choose what to do with my free time. And if I want to make more money, I'll see more patients. If I want to spend more time with the family, that's what I'll do. And so I think the big driver and the thing you would look at, Amy, is who am I employed by? And if I'm self-employed, I've got a lot more freedom in the answer to that question. And if I'm employed by a system, I can probably bet with a fair high degree of certainty that those savings are going to be turned into productivity, which I think on one hand, the doctors are reporting back they're quite happy with the system taking them away from the computer screen and allowing them to interact more closely with the patient. On the other hand, when they're asked to go from 22 patients a day to 28 patients a day, I'm not sure they're going to be quite as happy about that. But I think that's the reality.
Yeah, that can be very stressful. And again, I think it's important, like we think about all this amazing technology that can really support improved efficiencies, outcomes, things like that. We always have to remember that there are usually human beings at the end of the end user of all of these things. So it's really important that as we're bringing these things to market and using them, that we don't forget the human aspect of it and the opportunities that we have to improve the overall experience, whether it's for the patient or the provider. But really interesting stuff that's going on. And I think it's almost like with AI, it's like, how can we almost can't even think of all the opportunities that we have. But as we start in one area, more things will continue to grow. So super exciting. So switching gears a little bit into kind of the general landscape when we think about the development of apps and care monitoring technologies that we're seeing, come into market, whether it's for diabetes management or obesity management or cardiovascular disease, things like that. Where are you seeing opportunities for these types of monitoring and app technologies to sort of expand or lock in different customer bases?
Yeah, I think one of the most exciting areas in the wearable space is essentially wearable continuous laboratory results. And we've had it now for quite some time in the form of continuous glucose monitoring. But this year, going into 2025, we're likely to start seeing lactate and cortisol being measured and available. And then we're likely to see other enzymes come available, and again, in very small, wearable, disposable patch technologies that continuously, meaning perhaps every 3 minutes, every 5 minutes, of differences between the manufacturing approaches, will sample different enzymes. And I think we're going to see things in the liver space, in the kidney space, potassium, for example, troponin for cardiac. You can imagine, for example, a patient coming in on a potential chest pain. The physicians are kind of not sure whether there actually has been a heart attack. They normally would potentially either discharge them and hope things go well, or admit them in for observation or upstairs. But here, potentially, they could slap a small wearable on and measure troponin levels and send them home and let them know if changes occur on essentially a real-time basis. So I see effectively this whole new field of continuous laboratory. And frankly, the physicians and health systems don't know what to do with that information right now, because they've always only had episodic information. And there's a whole service infrastructure that has to be built behind it to deal with it. But we've learned a lot from continuous glucose monitoring, as I know you know at Novo, and we need to take those lessons and translate them into all the other areas of medicine that'll be impacted.
And perhaps there's even an opportunity to really use that to springboard into more of a preventive healthcare model, the well care model versus the sick care model that we all have. If we can start to identify some of these biomarkers or things like that through these types of technologies, perhaps we can get ahead of them a little bit more than we have traditionally, and help mitigate or prevent things from happening as well.
Well, one of the things healthcare has not had a good set of offerings in is feedback loops for patients that are timely. A lot of the feedback loops most patients experience are just every 3 or 6 months they might go in and see the doctor, and that becomes the feedback loop. But CGM gave us a 3-minute feedback loop, and that had huge impact. And I think as we see more feedback loops that the patients can respond to, and we have supporting systems for that, we're going to end up impacting that preventative area and preventing other downstream expenses and inconveniences because things are caught earlier. So I think there's huge potential there on both the cost side as well as the convenience side, as we apply some of the same lessons we've learned from CGM. Yeah, no, very exciting space. And hopefully we can continue to move in that very positive preventative direction. I think that would help everybody. So just there are a lot of questions I want to ask you. I know we're running out of time, but switching gears too, as we think about, again, in this technology space in healthcare, we really saw a move to leverage all of these things that have just sort of almost been kind of tangential during the pandemic. We had no choice. We had to really move to telehealth. We had to leverage these virtual connections or these remote patient monitoring types of technologies when people couldn't actually be live and in person. And obviously we saw a lot of expansion and growth through things like the virtual care model in primary care, as well as mental health, which is still, there's a big investment still in that space. But from your perspective and what you're seeing, what's happening in other specialty areas? Because there have been some pullbacks as well. So what is your thought on where you're seeing a lot of potential investment and growth in other specialty areas? Well, one of the things we specialize at TDV is in specialty virtual care. So actually all of our work is in specialty care. But we're very excited about what we're doing in the specialty care arena. So we have one of the most successful virtual GI practices in the country. It's now, as of September, will be in 50 states, called Ishi Health. and it has an extraordinary growth rate, and it has the highest net promoter scores of any GI practice we know of in the country. Ishii Health is a heart failure practice that's virtual, and very interesting. It bolts onto local cardiology, general cardiology practices, and now allows that patient to not have to go to an academic center, not have to travel, in some cases, hundreds of miles away from home, and they can stay with their local cardiologist and still have access to heart failure specialty care. That one's really, really interesting, exciting. It also has really interesting RPM capabilities, because beyond the drugstore instruments of blood pressure cuffs and weight scales and that sort of thing, they're really taking and building really interesting AI-driven algorithms off of implant data from pacemakers, defibrillators, pulmonary hypertension monitors, and loop recorders, for example. So there's a whole huge mountain of data that's really never been really reality applied for chronic care management in a practical way that Ishii's taking on. Remission is one. It's working in rheumatology, and Remission has an incredible rate of getting people off of biologics, which is a huge savings and a huge bit of convenience. And we're really excited about it because it combines lifestyle medicine together with rheumatology, along with mental health and dietetics, to deliver a kind of a complete solution as opposed to a fragmented solution. And then Tele 911, as an example, is a emergency medicine practice that's virtual. You don't see emergency medicine in the virtual world, but in Tele 911, they pair up with EMS services around the country and actually provide a emergency physician consult at the time the paramedics are actually with the patient. And in a very high percentage, the patient no longer needs to be transported to the hospital. And so they avoid the hospital, they avoid the ambulance cost, which in some communities in California, it's as high as $3,800, and they avoid the ER cost. So it's a huge opportunity of convenience, saves patients a ton of money out of pocket in terms of copays and deductibles, and saves payers an awful lot of money. And they're seeing the same kind of doctor they would see if they got to the ER and waited for 4 hours. So really interesting set of dynamics going on.
Well, it's a very thoughtful way to approach, leveraging the convenience factor with, monitoring resources, managing resources and things like that. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I love the, the holistic offerings, instead of just offering a technology that's sort of monitoring one condition. A person is not a condition. They are a human being with lots of different things going on, and many health conditions require lifestyle modification, mental health support. So those holistic offerings, I think, are really genius. And I hope to see more of that, as we move forward. But I think we're just about out of time, but I want to say thank you so much. As we talked at the top of the hour, or the top of the conversation, you've held so many positions in so many organizations. You're Chief Digital Officer with Eric Topol at the Scripps Research Translational Institute. You're the co-founder and operating partner of Takeda Digital Health, among other things. Do you have a favorite role? One that I didn't even mention. I'm just curious.
Yeah, you can tell I'm easily bored, so I have to do lots of things. I particularly like working with entrepreneurs, doesn't really manage the age, that want to change the convenience factor, the access, and the empathy level of healthcare service delivery. And frankly, those are such low bars by most of the competitors that it's fun taking on the industry when you compete on those features and then simultaneously work on the actual healthcare and clinical outcomes that you can achieve. But when you can attract patient volume because you can change dramatically the convenience, access, and empathy elements, and I don't just mean from the physician, I mean across the entire patient experience. As many people know, they love their physician, but they hate the office experience, or they hate the health system experience, and so many things that go with it. So I'm very interested, and that's really where I get my energy from, is when we can make those kinds of changes.
Yeah, and I think if we can crack that nut, you just create such a more empowered stakeholder anywhere in the entire equation. And I think that's that's really, we want people to feel empowered to make the right decisions for themselves and with their treatment team and the like. So, but thank you so much. Just a wealth of information and experience, and certainly would want to have you back very soon to share some more of your insights, and congrats on all the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Amy. And you're in an exciting place now, probably the fastest growing pharma company in the world. So it got to be an interesting ride at the moment.
A lot going on. Yep.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Alrighty, and next up we have Amy still on, and she's going to be talking to Colette Edwards, who is the author of the book giveaway that we've been doing today. Thank you so much, Colette, for your gracious book giveaway that we are running. And Amy, I'll hand it back over to you.
Awesome. Colette, thanks for joining. Good afternoon. How you doing? Well, we're excited to have you joining us Colette is the Chief Medical Officer and founder of Positive Health. And like I did with Dawn, I'm going to hand it over to you, Colette, to share a little bio on yourself, because you can talk about it way more, in a better way than I can. So go ahead and just share a little background on yourself, and then we'll jump into some of the questions.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to go pretty quickly. I am a gastroenterologist with an MBA from Wharton, and I also have additional training with a graduate certificate in health and wellness coaching, as well as training in translational health disparities at the NIH. And prior to my current work as founder of Positive Health, I was the National Medical Executive for Health and Wellbeing for Humana's 75,000 employee and dependent population. And I just wanted to say off the top and to echo what you had said and tie into the title of the symposium, that I very much see digital as a tool and not an end in and of itself. Because at the end of the day, to your point, it's all about real people with real problems. And I learned very early in my career, starting off in practice and then across many roles with several organizations, that regardless of the role that I was in, that if you really focus on the person, and that person might be, in a different category depending upon the organization, but if you really focus on the person, that was key to everything. And it really brings a tremendous degree of clarity to decision making. And while I feel that healthcare has a lot to learn from other industries, healthcare is different. And you've got people's lives on the line, and the human body doesn't act timelines and ROI timelines, et cetera. So if for no other reason, in and of itself, it makes it very different right off the bat. And therefore, that has got implications for every stakeholder within the industry.
100%. And I think that is really at the core of where we need to be going with healthcare. And I love that perspective. Kind of picking up with that, we're going to talk a little bit about, women's health in this session and how we can innovate the healthcare ecosystem to support the menopause journey. And when we think about people and the fact that, nobody wants to be seen as a statistic or a population or even a patient. But, we need to really make sure we have that human approach to everything that we do. But when I think about healthcare in the United States and even globally, women, if we talk about the US, women make up half of the US population. But when we think about research for healthcare clinical trials, there's really been a lack of data on women by virtue of how clinical trials have been conducted in the past, for a long time. And so as a result, there are gaps when it comes to really understanding conditions that impact women, whether it is, anything from cardiovascular disease, cardiometabolic diseases, things like that, but also women's health in particular, as they're going through midlife, things like that, in menopause. Can you talk a little bit about how things like digital health solutions and the innovations that we're seeing in that space can support this gap that we've had, that not just women, but also women who might have been underrepresented based on race and gender and things like that?
So I think digital has the opportunity to be built from scratch, focused on people with a continuous feedback loop. And it can, particularly in an era of AI, which has a long way to go and needs to be properly leveraged, can bring tremendous power and understanding to the situation in terms of program development, in terms of the end user, whomever that might be. And separate from the digital divide, it also makes things more accessible to more people immediately and takes out some of the cost that would otherwise make some things not achievable. Although there always have to be people in the process, just like there are people at the end of the rainbow of everything that we're doing in healthcare.
Yeah, agree. And when we think about the topic that we have here, looking at menopause, how do digital health solutions for menopause management contribute to reducing healthcare costs in the long term?
So I would say that one of the ways right off the bat is the hormonal changes that occur as a result of the menopause journey immediately increase the risk of a lot of chronic conditions. So heart disease, hypertension, stroke, metabolic syndrome, high cholesterol, depressive symptoms, anxiety, diabetes. Or if you already have those as pre-existing conditions, it may make things more difficult to manage, and all of a sudden things have been going along well and now they aren't anymore, and it's not really clear why that is. And so you can see that scenario happening where someone may have depressive symptoms, they're put on antidepressant medication, but really the issue is the falling estrogen levels, and what they really need for their symptoms is to get hormone therapy if that's something that they can take without any contraindications. So that would just be one example of taking cost out of the system. And then you can also see a scenario where if a woman doesn't have typical symptoms that people think of, like hot flashes or night sweats, they come up with palpitations as an example, and the next thing you know, they're going down the cardiology pathway, which may be completely appropriate, but because the menopausal transition can impact the entire body, just like COVID, you can have a multitude of symptoms, many of which are very common. And so women can twirl in the system for a very long time, getting a lot of workups done that might not have been needed, which is generating costs to everyone in the system, not the least of whom is the woman herself. And that's not to say that it's always going to be menopause, because it's not. But if no one is thinking about it in the first place, then that's a lost opportunity to think through a potentially unifying diagnosis and get the right care to that person as soon as possible, because people are suffering quite unnecessarily when there are lots and lots of options out there to help them.
Yeah, it really, when we talk about, the gap that I mentioned at the top of this, there's so much opportunity to focus on better understanding this change in life and how it's impacting people's lives. And it really just hasn't been studied that much, but it's nice to see it does seem to be a much more focused investment in this technology innovation space in menopause to better understand what the implications are for the women in general, but also, like you'd mentioned, for heart health and weight management and things like that. So really an important area to better understand. And and I know that we, as a part of today's symposium, we're doing your book giveaway, navigating your healthcare journey lessons about the U.S. healthcare system and real stories. Just as a sort of a highlight of your book, are there any sort of practical aspects or advice that you want to, like, sort of nuggets that you'd like to share here, just to sort of highlight the book and some of the insights that you've captured in the document in the book?
So I would say that one of the biggest lessons and piece of advice is for people to recognize that they have much more power than they believe they have, and then it feels like they have. That I would wish that as people interface with the healthcare system, that they would become like the many parents that you see who have a sick child with cancer or a child with a rare condition. And often they get to know as much about the condition as the care team, and all their fear and not wanting to ask questions or not wanting to look stupid, all of that goes out the window because there's no time for that. They've got to know what's going on to do the best thing for their child, but yet they won't necessarily do that for themselves. And you, with the healthcare system, the way that it is, as complicated, as complex, as many different pieces and parts there are that are not tied together, I think that people definitely need to have a sense of self-advocacy going into the situation, knowing as much as they can before they go into the situation, when they are in an interaction, making sure that they understand, because if they don't understand and they leave, the person who's going to be impacted the most is going to be themselves, because no one's ever going to be in your body. No one's ever going to know really what you're thinking except for you. And no one's going to care as much, other than probably a parent for a child, as you about your own health and well-being. And that, certainly ties into the case of women on the menopause journey who not infrequently are told that it's stress, or it's hormonal, but while they're saying hormonal, they aren't even really thinking menopausal hormonal. They're thinking something else. And when you look at, close to 18% of the workforce in the typical age band for menopause, that's huge. And when you look at a system where 69% of GYN residency programs don't have a designated menopause curriculum, you can see how it is a perfect storm for a less than optimal experience, as well as delayed diagnosis, misdiagnosis, and a lot of suffering, as I said, that is really quite unnecessary because there are lots and lots of options. And if you are a woman of color, if you are a member of the LGBTQ plus community, then that is just an additional layer of health disparity and inequity that is added to the picture.
Yeah. Well, I think self-advocacy is great advice for anybody. And for women in particular, I think women drive 80% of the medical decisions for their households. So we need women to be healthy and in good shape so that they can continue to live good, healthy lives and have their families thrive. So with that, Colette, thank you so much. I have a bunch of other questions I'd love to ask you as well, but we're out of time. But thank you so much. And definitely everybody register for the book because it's sure to be really insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
On the topic of the book giveaway, this is your last opportunity to win a chance to get Colette's book. All right, everyone. The last question is coming up now. How many Americans have to be affected by a disorder in order to be considered a rare disease? Fewer than 200,000, fewer than 250,000, or fewer than 150,000? Going to give you all about 5 seconds. And then I'm going to reveal the answer. Make sure you get in your answers right now. All right, and the answer is A. And congratulations to Nilla Paul, who has won the last book giveaway. Make sure that you reach out to Sammy. She will ask for your email and we'll reach out to you that way. And without further ado, moving on to our last hour here. We have Amanda Goltz. She's the Director of Industry Partnerships at Stanford Medicine. Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for joining us today. And it'd be great if you could give a quick introduction to our audience.
Sure. Thanks so much for the intro. Hello, everybody. And first, I just want to acknowledge the very powerful words of Dr. Edwards, and then ask for sympathy because it is very difficult to follow that. I do not have anything like that expertise or authority. So thank you, Dr. Edwards, for that talk. But I'm Amanda, and I'm here to chat about some current developments working on at Stanford Medicine and answer a few questions. I am the Director of Industry Partnerships for Stanford Medicine, comprising the School of Medicine and then 3 hospitals: Stanford Adult, Children's, Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, and Tri-Valley Community Hospital in Pleasanton. My role is to create a centralized hub to intake proposals from external tech partners, be that a small startup all the way up to the big tech companies, to co-create solutions that serve existing priorities at the hospital. So care quality, care safety, service to patients, and efficiency of care. So we're just starting that program. It's new at Stanford. They hired me to try to figure it out. It is such an honor and a privilege to bring together 2 things I'm really passionate about, which is digital health innovation and the application of technology to help clinicians provide better care with the clinical expertise and the amazing research and patient care that's being done at Stanford. So something I've learned in my perambulations around the healthcare system at a big payer, purchaser, provider, pharma, and finally big tech at Amazon is that it's really going to take everybody working together. The technological expertise of great entrepreneurs combined with clinical and operational expertise of a healthcare organization. That's the recipe to get something that actually works and scales.
Well, thank you so much again, Amanda, for joining us today. And we've had you on in the past, and it's always been a great discussion with you. And kind of talking about coming together, how do you facilitate those partnerships between Stanford School of Medicine and technology companies in order to be able to leverage digital health technologies for advancing healthcare education and research?
Yeah, great question. So I think one of the big advantages that I don't take for granted is, of course, Stanford is down in Palo Alto. We're right here in Silicon Valley. And we would hope to be the first sort of port of call for the VCs on Sand Hill Road and all of the startups that they're funding, that they would come to us with their ideas. We can't accommodate all of them, but hopefully we would be sort of like the home ground health system or at least academic center for experimentation. A lot has been said and written about the particular climate here in the Bay Area, the combination of academia, venture capital, and a startup ecosystem. And I think that is a really big advantage, although we're certainly not the only geography to have that. So luckily I have a lot of demand, a lot of incoming folks knocking on my door. What makes a good partnership for us is really sort of aligning all of the different interests and definitions of value. So we're looking for things that serve existing priorities at the hospital, right? Like nobody's going to care about Amanda's exciting partnership or innovation if it isn't in service of an existing goal. If it's not addressing not only a problem that actually exists, but a problem that is owned by someone and is keeping that person up at night, right? There are a ton of problems in healthcare delivery that we could focus on and work on. I wish we could. But what gets done in human organizations is problems that have been identified as problems, and somebody is specifically accountable for solving that problem. So that's what I work backwards from. I try to find companies that can bring to me sort of deep obsession with that problem. If you just take patient falls, for example, they have been studying patient falls. They are really inspired to do something about it. They've examined all the causes. They've explored a bunch of different potential solutions, and they put something together that really makes sense. And now they want us to help them with clinical workflow, how this operates in practice, what different patients need to prevent patient falls, what is the role played by nursing staffing, like all of those pieces together. And then we need a VC who is willing to fund the company, understand the value of having Stanford as a partner, and be patient enough to fund us through a pilot to collect sufficient data. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is baking into the pilot agreement exactly what the specified terms for a larger commercial deployment is, right? There are way too many pilots happening that never go anywhere. Let's be really upfront with ourselves about what we're going to measure, what we determine is successful, and what those commercial terms will be, so that once we do the pilot, we know exactly how we're going to evaluate it and how we're going to move forward. So that's one of the things I've learned for doing this for a long time. And then, not everything works, or sometimes we try it in one hospital and we're like, you know what, this is a better fit for the community center. Or, we tried this in vascular, but maybe this would make much more sense in oncology. So being willing to be flexible about what makes sense, I think, is also really helpful. And then we're also looking for folks that can be in with us for the long haul. What I do think is interesting is that given the current proposals and ideas that I'm looking at, there's not a huge there is a difference in resources and sustainability, but there's not a huge difference in sort of the quality of the idea from a relatively new startup or an entrepreneur and one of the big tech companies. Everybody is new to healthcare and the industry and the business. And even though the resources of a big tech company might be much broader, it's still down to that level of personal passion for solving the problem. And it's not like the Amazons and the Microsofts and the Facebooks and the Googles have a lock on that. Any entrepreneur who really cares about an issue enough to roll up their sleeves and dive deep is going to bring something to the table. So I just want to put that out there for any entrepreneurs who fear that the big tech companies are beating them to the punch. Not so.
Well, I love how you also addressed about how needing to address the existing solutions. I think that's super crucial. Instead of trying to look towards the future sometimes and think of what may be an issue in the future, it's kind of better to focus on the now and the existing, issues and try and solve a solution for that first. And also how you mentioned kind of being in there for the long run. And, while it's important to focus on the now, I also wanted to get your opinion on looking ahead. What do you think that emerging trends in digital health technologies, which ones do you believe have the most significant impact on medical education, healthcare delivery, and then how is your office also preparing for these changes?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think that that's one of the many pressures that hospitals, even big fancy one like Stanford, are under, which is the challenge of, on slim margins in an extremely uncertain reimbursement and regulatory environment. We're heading into an election, as everybody knows, and that has far-reaching implications for healthcare delivery, and it's hard to balance. I think really good healthcare operational leaders balance the needs of the here and now. I got to keep my doors open next quarter. How do I do that? With what kind of hospital do I want to be in 10 years? Mm-hmm. And I'm really inspired by my leadership at Stanford. I think we're doing some interesting things. I'll give you an example. I just talked a lot about how we're proceeding from very concrete, fiscal year 2025 goals. Things like, improving quality, creating a culture of safety, leveraging our patient experience data in different ways. So those are here and now kind of things. Mm-hmm. And then we're also hosting a virtual care summit in the fall because we're looking at the state of virtual care, right? It kind of took a pandemic for right. The healthcare industry to wake up to the fact that, hey, maybe telemedicine is a thing. And now we're thinking about what that looks like in the future. There's been some interesting news coming out of Walgreens and Walmart and Optum about how purely virtual care offerings maybe aren't economically sustainable if you're not backing them up with a whole acute care system for which they're the sort of loss leader, right? Mm-hmm. So we're trying to make sense of that recent past history and present an idea going forward for what a hybrid virtual and in-person primary care offering might look like. Where a in-person visit or virtual visit, what new definitions of care, mm-hmm. We don't think of responding to messages in the EHR patient portal as being care, but they are. they are care, right? We should be really careful with those. Those are important ways that we maintain connections with patients and help them out between visits. So if we expand our definition of care and think of that sort of all under the umbrella of, virtual care as an augmentation to the in-person visits, what would that model look like? So we're trying to lead the way, and that's one example of how we're sort of looking to the future.
Absolutely. And I spoke with Joanne Waters earlier today, and she also mentioned a hybrid solution, kind of moving towards the future. So I think that's kind of the word for the day, is that what's looking like in the next couple of years is moving to a more hybrid virtual care, in-person care, work-related, kind of everything moving forward. And I think it's a great solution to kind of, compromise on both aspects to be able to get the right amount of care that people need. So thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. We'll look forward to having you on again in the future.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Ansley. And thank you, everybody, for joining and listening in.
Thank you. And I will pass it back over to Jerry.
No, really wonderful interview there, Ansley. Thanks so much, Amanda, for coming on. And thank you, Amy, as well, for hosting the previous two interviews with Don and our book giveaway author, Colette Edwards. So as we go into the last stretch, if you like, of the symposium today, just before we move on to our penultimate esteemed speaker, I just want to chat to everybody about the current Breakthrough One membership. I know we always touch on it here at the symposium and other events as well, but I just want to divulge in a couple of new bits of programming that we put together for the Breakthrough membership. If you're not already a member, or if you are a member and you aren't really that aware about some of the new programming we have for exclusive for those of you in the audience that want a little bit more than the symposia events and the learnings that we put together here at these types of gatherings, but want to also have some more interaction. And this is maybe your chance to also get a little bit more involved in the community in terms of some of the networking opportunities and the exclusive discussion sessions that we have with some of the key leaders like Amy and Dr. David Berger, as well as Laurent, who you saw earlier in the program today, and join a community of like-minded individuals through the Breakthrough One membership. You also do receive daily insights from the HITLAB scientists around the digital health trends that they're seeing within the ecosystem as well. One of the new bits of programming I just want to highlight before we move on very quickly is the knowledge convene sessions that we're having, as I mentioned earlier, from some of the key leaders within the HITLAB community, like Amy, who presented in April around the human experience with digital adoption. And you can see some of the key takeaways around getting a better understanding of value-based care and patients' needs and behaviors, as well as adoption rates and so forth within the ecosystem. And we had, of course, Glenys, who's also on the Breakthrough board, present around AI-driven personalization and also disease prevention in value-based care. And Laurent presented in June last month around looking at the different trends in digital health possibilities, managing the story of health from birth all the way to aging. And these sessions are going to continue going throughout the rest of the year. And it's really a chance for us to be able to offer, being a learning lab ourselves, an opportunity to educate, inform, but also have our members and our community like yourselves participate. So please do look at the chat that is up right now. There should be a link going into there shortly from Sammy and Ansley and the rest of the team about how you can get a little bit more involved in the Breakthrough One membership and attend some of these more exclusive sessions with some of the key thought leaders, as well as the networking sessions we're running week on week too. So I just wanted to just sort of highlight there, and you can see here on the screen, we are actually running a discount on some of the general memberships right now as well. But please do check that out, and we hope to see you on some of that programming throughout the rest of the year. But I won't hold everyone up much longer. I will hand it back over to Ansley, who'll be interviewing Emily Lewis, friend of the lab, who we've seen on the program before. So Ansley, Emily, over to you.
Thanks, Jerry. And it is my pleasure to have Emily Lewis here with us today. She's on the topic of AI. This is definitely the person to talk to you about AI. She's the AI and Innovation Lead of Neurology at UCB. So Emily, it'd be great if you could just give a quick introduction, and then we'll get right into your questions.
Sure thing. Thanks, Ansley, for having me. And it's always a pleasure to be on and to follow Amanda from Stanford. I've already heard about her new role, and we're very excited to be working with her at Stanford. We currently work with the Industry Relations Committee there. So I've already heard about her incoming role, and I'm excited to be working with them. But excited to also be here today to tell you a little bit about myself. I've since November of last year been in an AI lead role within neurology at UCB, still digital care transformation. And so very excited to be talking about all the latest, and there's just too much to discuss, right? So I had to be very tailored in what I wanted to focus on today, but I'm excited to talk to you about what's been on my mind lately.
Absolutely, and I'll get right into it. So how does artificial intelligence currently being utilized in neurology, and what are some of the most promising applications that you're seeing?
Yeah, so I think the best answer to this question is diagnostics, and particularly imaging. There's been tons of progress there. And I'm not a radiologist by training, but I do know that AI is really helping, at least deep learning models, can automatically detect and highlight abnormalities in imaging, particularly in MRIs, CTs, and PET scans. So it can actually identify tumors and lesions and pathological features in imaging, which is at a greater speed than it was before. Obviously, it was done by a radiologist. It still is, but AI can highlight those areas of interest for the radiologist to take a particular look at. It also can help with segmentation and quantification within imaging. So think about actually looking at brain volumes. AI can help to assess what that looks like, especially in conditions like Alzheimer's or FTD, frontotemporal dementia, where there's brain atrophy, and in like MS, where there's lesion loads and you need to be looking at lesion counts. So AI can help with image analysis and interpretation, but it can also help with noise reduction. So actually things called convolutional neural networks are used to reduce noise in the image and reduce artifacts in the imaging data to make the image clearer and more accurate. And it can also help with resolution enhancement. So you can actually visualize fine details. I mean, think about it when you have a lens of a camera, right? Just making things sharper. So, you know, those subtle changes in brain imaging structures can be seen better with the enhancement of AI. We're also seeing that with the automated kind of assessment of those scans, that there's automated first drafts of radiology reports being written. And certainly the clinician and radiologist can edit those and add to them before signing off on them. But that is certainly an advancement that's been within the last couple of years. And I specifically work in neurology in epilepsy. So we also have seen advancements in the reading of EEGs. So actually using EEG signal to predict epileptic seizures. So not only detecting the seizures themselves as they're happening, but saying they're about to happen. So we've been working with many different companies on predicting seizures using AI-read EEG data. And then the last two things I would mention is AI is certainly used for risk assessment. So looking at genetic, lifestyle, and clinical data to really think through what's somebody's risk of developing a neurological disease, as well as prognosis. So AI models can predict disease progression and actually even predict complications so that you can be more proactive in enabling better management of preventative care.
Well, I had no idea that AI could be so useful in diagnostics and imaging and a variety of different things in neurology. I think that's so interesting and definitely good for the future. And how also can AI help with personalized treatment plans for these disorders? And are there any challenges in implementing such as approaches?
Yeah, so the beauty of AI these days is the ability to put lots of different kinds of data together, so multimodal data. And so, you know, we're seeing the ability to put together genetic information with medical history, with lifestyle, with imaging, with biomarkers, to find patterns amongst all that data. And that data can then be used particularly in the treatment space for drug response prediction. So we can see how each patient might have a personalized treatment strategy based upon some of those factors. And it can also be used for dosage personalization. So once you actually find a treatment that you believe is the best one, you can optimize that treatment dosing with minimizing adverse events and then improving that therapeutic outcome. So it's not only finding the right dose of one therapy, but it might be several therapies. So like what is the best combination of therapies to put a patient on if they're on a biologic and some kind of other immunosuppressant, for example. And aside from patient care, I have to mention that AI is also being used. There's a huge effort in drug repurposing. Mm-hmm. So drugs that are already approved, finding new uses for them and new indications. So that's kind of what's most exciting. In terms of challenges in that space, certainly generalizability of algorithms is difficult. You definitely need to do the clinical validation, I believe, at more of a local level for each implementation. So there has been a big call, especially out of UCSD. Chai, I'll take a moment here to say, the Coalition for Healthcare AI definitely wants to have a nationwide assurance labs approach, which I totally agree with. And it's great to simulate the AI models and see kind of in silico how they work. But I also believe the biggest challenge is implementation science, right? And so we need to make sure that these models generalize at the local level. So there also should be kind of an implementation pilot approach to actually making sure these algorithms are working for folks at the local level. So I would say integrating it into workflow and generalizability of the algorithms, certainly transparency and interpretability are hot topics. But certainly the clinical validation is the biggest challenge that we need to make sure we're doing.
And when you're talking about the kind of integration aspect, I'm curious to know, how should healthcare professionals be prepared to integrate AI and digital technologies into their practice, specifically in neurology?
Yeah, I mean, there's no one size fits all answer to this. I think it's the answer across the board, which is, first of all, it should start with good training of physicians. So I know a lot of medical schools are thinking through how do we change the curricula right now to make sure that the physicians are really prepared? Number one, that they don't feel like they're being replaced, but number two, that they feel like these tools are complementing them, and that they feel well prepared to interpret kind of the insights that AI is giving them and really incorporate it into their clinical judgment. But I also think that they should be taught to critically evaluate the systems, right? So not just blindly trust them, but look for the model cards, look for how what data was used to train the models, to really build confidence in these tools and accept and utilize them. But then in terms of actually implementing, I know a lot of systems have run the AI models silently behind the active or live system, which I think is a good way to start. But obviously piloting is the best way to do it. So actually having a gradual implementation process, troubleshooting that process and refining it based upon kind of real world feedback from clinicians. I know there's a lot of lessons learned from the sepsis model rollout with Epic, that there was a lot of alert fatigue, et cetera. So I think, I will harp on again, the implementation science component cannot be overstated. And there needs to be a feedback loop in there in which the clinicians are able to give RLHF, reinforcement learning with human feedback, and actually tell the system, no, I don't believe this is correct, and here's why, and help to actually train the model itself. But we need to make sure these systems definitely are satisfying clinicians and are undergoing kind of a continuous improvement process. So, yeah, those are the things I would start with.
Just to start, of course. I know we have a lot that's going to evolve, of course, over the integration with the AI and in diagnostics stuff in neurology. But this is so interesting for just to talk to you about this, because again, it's not something that I was aware of, that we can use AI to actually help with imaging and diagnostics and really help to integrate, with the physicians and kind of help collaborate and make hopefully their world a little bit easier moving forward, and also help with that patient engagement as well. So thank you so much, Emily, for joining us today. It was always a pleasure to talk to you, and look forward to talking to you soon as well.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on.
I will pass it back over to Jerry.
Wonderful, Ansley. Thank you. And it's always a pleasure to have Emily on the program. Please do connect with her via the chat. Her details are on there, as well as Ansley's details and the other moderators' details that have been speaking today on our program too. I do want to remind everybody that Women's Health Tech Wednesdays is continuing to go strong. Every Wednesday we have a female leader from the healthcare industry spend half an hour chatting to our very own Nina Joshi from Kaiser Permanente, who will talk about some of the more important topics within women's health and talk about their journeys within the industry as well. So do tune in 12:30 to 1 o'clock every Wednesday, and make sure you keep up and register so you get all the notifications via the events page on the HITLAB website. Now, as we round off the August Digital Health Symposium in a very strong way, I'd like to welcome Randy Subramani from New York Presbyterian, who is a veteran of the HITLAB circuit and has been on the program a couple of times. And to round us off, talking about improving and enhancing the healthcare transformation using digital. We're going to be talking and rounding off today's program with Randy, going into how using digital is going to enhance and improve hospital supply chains. Randy, thanks so much for coming on the program. Again, we really value your time and effort to put into coming on and sharing your insights with us.
Jerry, happy to be here and happy to dive into this deep world of the interconnection between digital technologies and supply chain management. It's an exciting time in this industry.
No, absolutely. And those who haven't had the pleasure of seeing you on the program before, we'd love to get a quick 30-second bio on what you've been doing and what you've done in the past.
Sure. So Jerry, I serve as the director of supply chain management for New York Presbyterian Hospital, large academic medical institution in New York City with dozens of hospitals and medical facilities across the city, across parts of upstate New York. And in my role, in essence, at a very, very high level, is around the strategy and operations for the healthcare supply chain. That essentially means ensuring that all of the disposable, reusable, and to a certain extent, the pharmaceutical goods that we purchase are readily available every day for patient care, while ensuring the strategies on the back end, of which implementing future digital technologies is key, are in place to ensure that we're successful.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and really super important to make sure that all of the right pieces of inventory are getting to where they need to be at the right times, of course, to make sure that care can be given to the right people at the right time. And let's dive right into it and talk about and hear from you and how digital technologies are reshaping the traditional sort of supply chain practices in terms of management within healthcare institutions right now, and the key advantages and also the challenges, of course, associated with this undertaking of transformation.
Yeah, Jerry, I love the choice of the verb reshaping, because I think that describes, when we think about reshaping, and healthcare itself is so vast. You have large pharmaceutical players, med tech, hospitals, vast ecosystem, and I'll speak in slightly more general terms, just given organizations could be at different places on that spectrum. But when it comes to just bread and butter supply chain, I think there's three things to consider with how digital technologies are reshaping the industry. The first, to me, centers around this notion of improved tracking and transparency. I think everyone's aware of RFID tech. Everyone's heard of the term RFID. Everyone's probably becoming more familiar with this term IoT, or like the Internet of Things, which is basically sensor technology. Whether it's the drug supply chain, whether it's the disposable supply chain market, or the reusable, understanding where things are in terms of a traceability perspective just helps to manage theft, loss, and in the end ensures timely replenishment of these critical needs, especially for hospitals or organizations that run lean supply chain. So improved tracking and transparency is topic one that comes to mind. Topic two, and in a way related, to me, centers on the use of digital technologies to enhance data analytics. having data in a more of a real-time manner to predict demand, reduce stockouts, minimize excess inventory. Jerry, you said it best, having supplies or drugs or therapies at the right place, at the right time, in the right quantity, the right location, all those key rights. Getting that right requires the right layers of data. And I'm optimistic that as models ingest, whether it's a chat GPT or whatever, or something within an ERP system, frankly, it doesn't technically matter to me. But as we ingest more data, we'll be able to reactively, but more importantly, proactively use data to guide inventory management practices. And then, Jerry, the third I'll say before I briefly elaborate on challenges and advantages is the ability of digital technologies to streamline procurement processes. When I say that, and I think of procurement as twofold. One, it's the arm of buying things. So every organization buys something, whether you're manufacturing goods, whether you're a hospital buying widgets. Utilizing digital technologies to guide generally those buying processes is becoming more and more necessary just to reduce manual labor. And then on the procurement side, when you think about it, utilizing technologies to I dare not say replace those in the risk management or a legal team, but to draft contracts, to draft RFPs, to create scorecards that help you mitigate and understand risk when it comes to sourcing from provider A, B, C, and D, I think are all coming to the foreplay. And then, Jerry, with that in mind, when I think of advantages, and I'll be a little bit more high level with these, first, of course, the first advantage of this transformation, utilizing digital technologies, centers on patient care. Getting all this right just helps ensure that the quality of care and having those supplies available will be at the right time in the right place, and all those things that we just discussed. So patient care is one. In the end, digital technologies just drive efficiencies across operations, across therefore financial cost. And I think the third is around just transparency, understanding more and more. And we'll notice more regulation. I think Germany had a recent supply chain act or law, and we do have the DSCA here, the Drug Security Supply Chain Act, which requires traceability and transparency. So I think utilizing these digital technologies to help us understand where things are coming from is becoming more important. To close, so many challenges. I think the three that come to mind, one is around cost, of course. That's bottom line financials of paying for technologies and consultants, the cost of labor and resource allocation. There's the challenge of change management. Everyone's maybe comfortable doing what they're doing. And lastly, just the challenge of integrating data and sources along with protecting that data, patient health information, so critical. Protecting that data in this era of cybersecurity remains a challenge, no matter how robust an information security department is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for bringing all those points to light, Randy. Definitely things that I think I myself didn't really consider, in terms of the opportunities and challenges, of course, with digital playing a part in in supply chain management and stuff. And of course, within that comes integration, of course, and making sure that we're able to integrate those technologies in terms of the provider system across the different departments within the hospital's own supply chain. We talked a lot on this program about different healthcare entities in collaboration with each other to transform the way that healthcare is being delivered, using digital. But in this instance of supply chain, it's really the internal pieces of the clinical, administrative, IT departments and so forth. How is that collaboration going to improve the facilitation for integration within the hospital systems?
Well, what I would say is that type of collaboration, I think a few things come to mind, Jerry. The first is that type of collaboration helps to break down department silos. And when I say that, and maybe I'm in a slightly biased perspective, but New York Presbyterian, we're affiliated with two world-renowned universities, being Cornell University and Columbia University. Our physicians are employed by the university, while all of our other clinical staff are employed by the hospital. When you have this type of governance and structures, naturally, there's going to be departmental silos that exist. And those silos just in the end detract in many different ways from the operations of patient care. But I remain heavily optimistic that utilizing digital technologies can just remove those silos and really promote that culture of collaboration, communication, removing the optics of who am I employed by, to just in the end ensure we're better caring for our patients. Relatedly, I think just digital technologies can help us to better standardize data. I dare to say how I, as a supply chain leader, define a widget in our ERP versus how a clinician refers to a specific type of catheter are night and day differences. And I think utilizing technologies to ingest data and learn from how I, as a supply chain leader, while how a chair of a department thinks about a supply, can help get us, and I'm speaking very specifically in the supply chain lens, can help get us into a place where we can standardize data. I think last thing I want to highlight and bring it back full circle to Jerry, to something I previously mentioned, is there's always going to be an element of resistance to change. But as much as healthcare organizations, which are always going to have clinical experts, research experts, business experts who don't have licensure like myself to perform clinical care, strategy experts, regulatory experts, we have to think of things in terms of cross-functional support, in terms of teams that make decisions, utilizing for digital technologies to be well represented. But in the end, I think it really comes down to, all that being said, the buy-in at the very top. Healthcare leaders have very difficult jobs for many different reasons. One of the most difficult reasons is healthcare, maybe certain areas, but hospitals are not high margin industry or not high margin organizations. Profit margins are in the single digit percentage points. And with that, you make tough decisions. You have a 5% profit margin this year. Do you invest that in building a new cancer center? Do you invest that in building a new supplier or integrating a new supply chain technology? It's tough decisions, but I think having that support from an investment lens, along with then training and education, just helps us utilize data technologies to just move patient care forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In the last 60 seconds, Randy, I know we're very much close to time. I think we've asked pretty much all of the speakers here in terms of looking forward to the future. What trends are you anticipating right now in terms of digital transformation for hospital supply chains? As you currently see it.
Yeah, Jerry, I'll keep it to your point, rapid fire, 60 seconds. I think we're definitely seeing the interplay more of I'll term it robotics and automation. And when I say robotics, I don't mean cyborgs walking around as in like the Terminator. I simply mean like bots in our systems, in our ERP, helping to guide the procure to pay processes, helping to conduct manual repetitive processes such as the payment of invoices that a human being would normally do, then thereby allowing that human being to perform more value add activity. So I think the implementation of robotics and automation is one. I think we'll continue to see, I think the previous speaker highlighted it in terms of utilizing AI for clinical care, but we'll see AI more involved in ingesting supply chain purchase data so we can then make more predictive analytics about what to purchase during a specific season, what to purchase as our orthopedic volume grows 20%. I think those are the digital technology trends are here, Jerry, they're here to stay. It's just about leaders making the right allocations of investment and in the technologies and the skill force to help in the technology itself and in the labor, so team members become more aware of how to use technology to improve patient care. But I'm a long-term player on robotics, automation, and AI.
Yeah, you get no disagreement from me there for sure, Randy. You're getting a lot of agreement there with the thumbs ups and the claps there in the audience as well. Randy, thanks so much for rounding off our Digital Health Symposium for July. Really wonderful to have you on the program as always. Those of you in the audience, please do connect with Randy. We did put his details in the chat, and thanks so much for sharing your insights with the audience today, Randy, as always.
Jerry, always a pleasure. Thank you all for listening. Have a nice day.
Pleasure is ours. Well, that rounds up our Digital Health Symposium for July. We talked about a number of different avenues for transforming healthcare using digital today, from the multitude of subject matter experts and key thought leaders within the HITLAB community. Of course, we want to thank them all for providing their insights and, of course, and more importantly, sharing their time with us today. And this show wouldn't be brought to you today without the amazing contributions, efforts, and work done by all the folks you see here on the screen. Rachel, Yamina, Ansley, Raymond, Pallavi, Melissa, Naomi, Sammy, Nico, and of course, Stan Kishnowski, who should be back with us next month. And we, of course, want to thank you, the audience, and our partners, of course, who are sponsoring these conversations today that we're able to bring you on a monthly basis and a weekly basis in terms of Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. So thank you all, of course, as well, the audience, for joining in and being very interactive in the chat. We'll look forward to seeing you all next month for our August symposium, which will focus, I think, on investment and startups. Do enjoy the last month of summer. And from us at the HITLAB team, it's goodbye from us and goodbye from me.